Imagine being the most speared creature on the planet, the literal last dragon in existence, only to get taken out by a mob of humans and wake up in a diaper? That's right. Our legendary red dragon just got reincarnated as a tiny human squirt named Ray. He's gone from breathing fire to spitting up curdled milk. But don't let the cuteness fool you. Inside that baby brain, he's already plotting the ultimate revenge tour to delete humanity for what they did to his kind. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start from the very beginning. Dragons used to be the ultimate nightmare for humanity, which naturally led to humans hunting them down like sport. Eventually, there was only one dragon left. His final goal? Spite. He wanted pure revenge on the humans. Despite his best scaly efforts, he was overwhelmed by superior numbers and slain. But as the darkness closed in, he started hearing voices. Suddenly, he opens his eyes and finds himself staring at a human face. He's a baby, in his father's arms. Confused and completely disoriented, the once mighty dragon is currently struggling in the grip of a mere human. The dad, being a typical proud parent, thinks his son is just squirming because he likes him. The baby, however, is internally screaming. He decides right then and there to blast this lowly human with a legendary dragon's breath and burn him to a crisp. He prepares his ultimate move, taps into his draconic fury, and lets it rip only for it to be a massive attack of curdled milk. He splatters puke straight onto his dad's face. The dad freaks out, absolutely disgusted by the milk welcome, while the baby is baffled. What happened to my magic, he wonders. Then, the mother steps forward to hold him. The tiny human dragon is scared witless, wondering what on earth this woman is going to do to him. To his surprise, she just gently touches his face and welcomes him to the world, calling him Ray. The baby is flustered, pondering why she gave him such a silly name and why she's being so nice. Unable to actually speak his mind, he wonders if these humans have any clue who he really is. As the mother looks at him with pure delight, the dragon realizes the heavens actually gave him a second shot. If he can grow back into the spirit of the mighty red dragon, he'll have the ultimate chance to fulfill his burning desire, total revenge on the humankind that wiped out his dragon family. The fire of vengeance is still very much alive in this diaper. Ray is already plotting his massive comeback tour, deciding that once he gets this human body under control, he's going to return the favor and wipe humanity off the map, just like they did to the dragons. While Ray is busy mentally planning a genocide, his father, Jake, is starting to get a sneaking suspicion that this kid is going to be nothing but trouble, seeing as he's already the world's most aggressive newborn. Resting on his mother's arm, Ray tries his best to look intimidating and murderous, but then biology kicks in. He starts feeling incredibly sleepy. It turns out that spending all your draconic energy just trying to control a tiny human mouth is exhausting work. He dozes off, his last thought being a grumpy complaint about how pathetic and weak human bodies are. Fast forward a bit, and Ray has grown a little bigger. He spent his time gathering intel on these strange creatures. He even finally bothered to learn his parents' names, realizing that calling them short-haired human and long-haired human wasn't exactly specific enough for a master strategist. Ray reveals that his parents are named Jake and Scarlet, and honestly, they are bad looking for humans. Scarlet has a beautiful face that matches her kind personality, and Jake is packed with way more muscle than the average villager, making him look actually formidable. Whenever the neighbors drop by, they treat Ray's parents with a massive amount of respect. It turns out they are adventurers, which is just the human word for people who hit things for a living. One visiting villager gushes over Jake, thanking him for saving his wife's life in the Black Forest, thanks to his insane swordsmanship. Another villager chimes in, praising Scarlet for being a top-tier mage, noting that you couldn't find another magic user within a 100-mile radius if you tried. The village basically thinks they hit the jackpot having these two around. While the villagers are busy fanboying over the Talon family, the couple remains humble, playing it off like they just did what anyone else would do as long as everyone stayed safe. Right then, Scarlet spots little Ray commando crawling across the floor. She immediately flags him for a refueling mission and goes to grab him some grub. One of the villagers squinted at Ray and mumbled that the kid's hair looked suspiciously red, though he chalked it up to the lighting. Jake chimed in, noting that Ray's hair actually started turning that fiery shade a few days ago. As the neighbors finally cleared out, reminding Jake that they were counting on his sword to keep the local farm monsters at bay, the dragon-turned-baby started putting the pieces together. Red hair? That was a clear sign. He still had some of his original draconic power lingering in this tiny meat suit. Outside, the villagers' tone shifted instantly. Once they were out of earshot, they started gossiping about the Talons being cursed. Their logic? You don't just become top-tier adventurers without bringing some dark juju back from the monster-infested trenches. Ray, however, took the gossip as a compliment. He figured the villagers were just terrified of his red hair and felt intimidated by his grand, legendary presence. But his parents, they were the real mystery. His mother picked him up for mealtime, but since Ray isn't exactly a spoon-fed kind of guy, he decided to take matters into his own hands or face. He dunked his entire head into the bowl to eat like a beast, making an absolute disaster of the kitchen. Surprisingly, Scarlet didn't even get pissed. She just watched her little messmaker with a smile. The little dragon spawn was convinced that no matter how hard he tried to provoke the humans, they were simply unshakable. He even went as well as marking his territory by peeing directly into his dad's mouth while Jake was napping. But instead of a lecture or a timeout, Jake woke up beaming with pride, convinced his son was a literal genius for mastering the art of the bathroom at such a young age. After being subjected to this level of aggressive positivity, Ray concluded that if hell actually existed, it probably looked exactly like this. As it turns out, adventurers are a rare breed in this world, and a mage like Ray's mother is basically a legendary unicorn. The Dragon Kid figured that once he combined his mother's rare magical lineage with his own original dragon powers, the strongest magic in existence, his revenge tour was going to be a breeze. Fast forward to Ray turning 2 years old. In this world, that's the magic number where every toddler gets dragged to a mage evaluation to see if they've got the spark. This was the big day for Ray to prove he was packing heat. While Jake stayed behind, waving and wishing them luck, Ray clung to his mother's arm as they rolled out in a horse-drawn cart. Ray spent the ride narrating his own greatness. As the reincarnation of a red dragon and the son of a high-level mage, failing this test was mathematically impossible. If he could just reclaim his magic, he'd be back on top of the food chain in no time. Eventually, they hit the town, and the red-haired tiny terror stretched his limbs after a nap. His only real concern? This flimsy, squishy human body. As Scarlet carried him through the chaotic central marketplace, Ray kept his eyes peeled, watching adventurers hawk high-quality beast crystals like they were common street snacks. While the crowd is busy fanboying over the high-level loot, a local beggar approaches one of the adventurers, hoping for a stray scrap of food. Instead, he gets a boot to the chest and a warning to stay out of the way of real business. Watching the humans ridicule their own kind, Ray realizes that even without wings and scales, these people are still the same, always looking down on the weak. It triggers a massive flashback to his past life, back when he saw it as his draconic duty to protect the vulnerable, a mission that ultimately cost him everything. Snapping back to reality, they finally reach the Rollin Academy for the big magic evaluation. The line is massive and the tension is even bigger. Ray watches as kid after kid fails the test, bursting into tears because they didn't make the cut. One toddler starts a full-blown tantrum, screaming that the system is rigged, but our reincarnated dragon just rolls his eyes. Life's unfair, kid, get used to it, he thinks, chilling in his mom's arms like a tiny boss. Finally, the moment of truth arrives. The proctor calls out, Ray Talon. The old wizard instructs Scarlet to have her son place his hands on the crystal ball. The rules are simple. If the kid has the spark, the ball glows. The color tells you the element. Ray steps up, practically vibrating with confidence. He's already imagining the look on everyone's faces when this ball explodes with the power of a mighty red dragon. He's mastered every element known to existence in his past life. This is basically a tutorial mission for him. He slams his tiny hands onto the crystal, waiting for the fireworks. Suddenly, he hears a sound sobbing. He looks up to see tears streaming down his mother's face. For a split second, Ray's ego takes over. Is she shocked by my genius? Is she crying tears of joy because I've got her same element? But then he looks down. The crystal ball is dark. It's not glowing. At all. The old wizard breaks the silence with a heavy sigh, officially bursting Ray's bubble. The verdict? Our legendary red dragon has absolutely zero ability for magic. He's a dud. When he hears the no magic verdict, the little guy absolutely loses it. He's internally screaming, "Excuse me? I was the strongest red dragon in history." A dragon without magic is like a bird without wings. It's scientifically impossible. Scarlet, desperate for a second opinion, reminds the wizard that she actually graduated from this very academy and asks if he's 100% sure. Meanwhile, Ray is hopping mad. He starts smacking the crystal ball with his tiny baby hands, convinced the wizard is a hack and the stupid ball is just broken. The wizard quickly snatches his equipment back, but the damage to Ray's ego is already done. Our angry boy literally spits out his pacifier in disgust. Does this old man have any idea who I am? I'm the ruler of magic. Fuming and convinced the wizard is lying to trick his mother, Ray goes full gremlin mode. He lunges forward, grabbing the old man's long beard and yanking on his mustache. Scarlet is freaking out, trying to peel her son off the poor guy. But Ray is a man possessed, swinging from that beard like a tiny vengeful wrecking ball. He's thinking, I know everything there is to know about magic. To say a legendary dragon has no aptitude is a total joke. On the bumpy cart ride home, Ray starts getting philosophical. He wonders if heaven is punishing him for all the humans he deleted in his past life. But then he gets annoyed. What's the point of reincarnating me just to nerf me? But then a light bulb goes off. He decides this is just a test from the heavens. If the mage path is blocked, he'll just find another way to reach the top and get his revenge. Later that night at the dinner table, Ray stares down his dad and pleads in broken toddler talk, "Teach me. Fight." Jake is stunned, wondering if his 2-year-old really wants to learn the way of the sword. Ray's already plotting his next move. If I can't be a mage, I'll become the greatest swordsman this world has ever seen. Either way, humanity's notice of eviction is still being delivered. The scene shifts to the training grounds, where a slightly older Ray is learning the way of the blade from his father, Jake. But turns out, the ritual tour is a lot harder than it looks in the movies. Ray has been grinding his swordsmanship for 2 years now, but his win-loss record against his dad is a depressing 0. During their latest wooden sword duel, Ray locks in. He's reading Jake's movements like a pro, waiting for that one perfect opening. There! As Jake swings down, Ray prepares to dodge and counter with a strike to the ribs. It's a flawless plan, right up until his toddler legs betray him. He gets his feet tangled, trips over his own shadow, and T-whack Jake's wooden sword lands square on his forehead. As the stars fade and Ray wakes up in bed later that day, he's fuming. My brain is a legendary dragon, but these clumsy human limbs are a total drag. Jake is sitting by the bed, unable to stop himself from letting out a laugh at his son's combat style. This immediately earns him a verbal beatdown from Scarlet. "He's only 4, Jake! Hold back a little," she yells, reminding him that the night trials are coming up fast. Jake mumbles that at this rate, the kid doesn't stand a chance, but Scarlet isn't having it. She tells him he's pushing Ray too hard, and that their son doesn't have to be an adventurer. There are plenty of safe, boring jobs out there. But Mr. Pie, Talon reassures his wife that he's not pushing him. He explains that Ray only seems clumsy because of his age. His brain is just moving faster than his body can keep up with. He points out they still have an entire year left, and they have to stay as confident that their son can make it into the Avery and Night Academy. Hearing this, Ray realizes he's got exactly 1 year to get his act together before the night trials. He has a brief moment of doubt, but then his draconic ego kicks in. I'm the reincarnation of a red dragon. There's no way I'm letting a puny human body hold me back. Getting his second wind, he looks his parents in the eye and promises them he'll become the strongest person the world has ever seen. To take the training to the next level, Jake hands over a serious upgrade, a real sword. Ray is stunned. It's heavy, it's sharp, and it feels way too big for a 4-year-old to handle. Jake explains that the extra weight is actually a secret training method to help him master his body control even faster. But wait, there's more. Jake whispers that he has one more surprise and leads Ray into a mysterious storage room. Waiting for them inside is a magic puppet. Ray stares at the wooden contraption, wondering what a doll is going to do for his combat stats. Jake warns him not to underestimate it. This thing is powered by real magic and is the exact same model used by elite academy students to train their apprentices. Ray looks at the puppet with a side eye, half convinced his dad is pulling his leg. Jake challenges him to a round, and Ray, never one to back down, warms up his wrists and swings that heavy steel sword with everything he's got. The puppet hums to life. Level 1 activated. As soon as Ray's blade hits the puppet's shield, the machine counters in a literal flash. Clang! Ray's sword goes flying across the room, and the trial ends instantly. Our legendary dragon boy is left standing there empty-handed, completely defeated by a wooden dummy. Seeing his son looking totally disgruntled, Jake steps in to boost his morale. Don't sweat it, kid. If you can beat just the first level of this thing, you're basically guaranteed to pass the night trial exam. He mentions he had to pull a lot of strings and use all his old connections to get this puppet for him. That's all Ray needs to hear. He's back in the game, more excited than ever, convinced he'll conquer the trial in no time. It looks like our boy is officially hitting the wall. After a brutal training session, Ray is left face down on the dirt, completely gassed. He lets out a heavy sigh, fuming that his legendary dragon brain is writing checks his toddler body can't cash. At this rate, he's starting to think he won't even beat the puppet, let alone delete humanity. Suddenly, a voice echoes from the shadows. "Why are you so obsessed with beating up a piece of wood?" Rei jumps nearly out of his skin, swinging his sword at thin air like a startled cat. Emerging from the brush is a blonde-haired girl who looks just as flustered as he is. She introduces herself as Amy, a local villager who's been watching him work out in the mountains. She apologizes for the jump scare, but warns him he needs to clear out before sundown. Rei, acting a little nervous, asks if the neighborhood is really that rough. Amy starts yapping away, explaining that the mountains are fine during the day, but since they're so close to the forest, magic beasts start prowling the second the sun dips. Rei's actually impressed by her survival intel, and Amy admits she knows the terrain like the back of her hand because she's always out here harvesting fruits and veggies. She offers to escort him down the mountain before it gets dark, and Rei, not eager to be a dragon-flavored snack just yet, immediately agrees. As they swap names, it turns out Amy already knows exactly who he is. Rei isn't even surprised. He knows he's the talk of the town, but not for the reasons he'd like. While everyone in the village admires the Town family, especially his dad, Jake the gossip takes a dark turn whenever Rei is around. Because no human in the history of the village has ever had hair that fiery red, the locals have reached the very logical conclusion that the kid is cursed. They don't just stare, they whisper that the curse might be contagious, treating our legendary red dragon like a walking biohazard. Listening to the whispers, Rei can't help but brood. It's the same old story. Everyone loves his parents, but they look at him like he's a walking plague. In this village, he's become a total outsider, liked by absolutely no one. It takes him right back to his past life. He wonders if it's the fault of those bedside stories where adults use vicious, horrifying red dragons to keep their kids in line. To a dragon, red is the color of ultimate peak performance. But to these humans, it's just the color of evil. He reflects on the massive irony of it all. Greedy humans were the ones who hunted his race to the brink, yet the dragons are always the ones written off as the villains in the history books. Rei internally fumes, justifying his revenge. They only fought back to protect themselves, but humans twisted that into proof of their brutality. He's deep in his feelings about how disgusting humanity is, until Amy snaps him out of it, asking what's going on in that red-haired head of his. As they make their way down the mountain, Amy keeps the conversation flowing. She mentions she's been spotting him training lately and asks if he's really serious about the blade. When Rei confirms he's aiming to be a swordsman, she thinks it's the coolest thing ever. Mostly because his dad is the only one in the village who actually knows which end of the sword to hold. She asks if he's gunning for the Knight Academy, and Rei gives her a firm nod. Amy then lets slip that her own brother is training for the exam too. She brags that he's the strongest kid in the village, but admits he's actually pretty jealous of Rei. After all, Rei gets private lessons from a pro, while normal folks have to figure it out on their own. When Rei asks about this brother, Amy gets hyped, suggesting they should all be friends, so the boys can spar together. But the friendship offer is cut short by the sound of heavy footsteps. Enter Gary, Amy's brother, who clearly didn't get the memo about being friendly. He stomps over and rudely orders Rei to get away from his sister. Sensing the heat, Amy immediately jumps in front of Rei, playing bodyguard and telling her brother to chill, because the cursed kid hasn't actually done anything wrong. Gary steps forward, interrogating his sister for hanging out with the cursed boy. He's so paranoid he actually starts checking her hair, terrified that Rei's red locks are a contagious disease. While Amy is busy being mortified by her brother's behavior, Gary's two lackeys join in, mocking Rei for being shameless. They start laying into him, sneering that his parents must have a miserable time raising a cursed freak. They even have the nerve to tell Rei his family should just pack up and leave the village, mumbling that common folk shouldn't have to deal with the bad juju of high and mighty adventurers who don't care about the little guy. That was the final straw. You can insult the dragon, but you don't insult the parents. Rei clenches his fist and lets out all that draconic rage, landing a massive, bone-crunching punch right into one of the bullies' faces. He pivots to take a swing at Gary, but another punk jumps in to intercept. The hit is so forceful, it sends the lackey flying straight into Gary, knocking them both back. Rei makes it crystal clear. He's here to wreck anyone who dares talk trash about his family. Gary scrambles up, spitting dirt. He knows exactly who Rei is, the son of the famous swordsman Jake. He assumes Rei has been pampered with elite training and challenges him to a fair fight. Gary tosses his weapon aside, claiming he won't use a sword because he doesn't want to accidentally kill the kid. Rei doesn't care about the handicap. He tells the whole group to come at him all at once because he's done playing nice. The brawl turns ugly fast. Punches are flying everywhere, but it quickly becomes clear that Rei's 4-year-old human body is failing him again. Despite his spirit, his squishy frame takes a beating. Gary lands a final, brutal blow that sends Rei smashing into the dirt, bleeding and broken. Gary looms over him, asking if he's ready to admit defeat. Ray somehow staggers back to his feet, but Gary isn't impressed. He starts trash-talking Ray's heritage, calling him a disappointment. Your dad is a great swordsman, and you're still this useless. Gary brags that his own father is just a regular merchant, yet he's already a better fighter than the prodigy. He tells Ray to give up on the sword entirely and go find something he's actually good at. Those words hit Ray harder than the physical punches. He collapses back onto the ground, the insult to his pride echoing in his head as he lies there feeling utterly hopeless. Back at the village, Amy is absolutely tearing into her brother, calling him out for being an overreacting jerk. Gary, ever the charming sibling, doubles down, claiming Ray deserved every hit and warning her to stay away from the cursed kid. He tries to play the us versus them card, pointing out that Ray's parents are high-level adventurers while they're just normal civilians. Amy's response? A furious, get your own dinner as she storms off. But once he's alone, Gary's bravado slips. He looks down at a massive bruise on his arm and realizes a terrifying truth. If he hadn't been wearing protective gear, Ray's very first punch would have snapped his bone like a dry twig. The weak kid actually won that exchange of raw power. Cut to the Talon household, where Ray slinks in looking like he went 10 rounds with a blender. He's covered in mud, scratches, and bruises. Scarlet takes one look at her battered son and knows exactly what went down. Ray tries to play it cool, claiming he just had a rough practice session. But Scarlet isn't buying the lie. She suspects the local kids had been bullying him again. Ray, stubborn as a mule and clinging to his I'm a man now energy, denies everything. Jake, overhearing the bravado, actually gives his son a nod of respect for the grind. Even with his face throbbing, Ray insists on one last practice session before dinner. He manages to talk his parents into letting him go, and soon he's back in the storage room staring down the magic puppet. He activates level 1, dodging the familiar swings with ease. He spots an opening and lunges, but Krake's sword gets wedged deep into a wooden pillar. As he's frantically trying to yank it out, the puppet doesn't wait. It delivers a brutal smack to his backside, sending a very undragon-like scream echoing through the house. The next morning, Ray trudges back up the mountain, only to find Amy standing there looking like she wants to crawl into a hole. She's waiting for him, overflowing with apologies for her brother's behavior. Ray, surprisingly chill about the whole thing, tells her to stop crying. He takes the hit to his own pride, admitting he just wasn't strong enough to win. Watching her tear up, Ray realizes that humans are a truly troublesome breed, but he decides he should probably learn this socializing thing if he's going to survive. He grabs an apple from her basket as a peace offering, signaling that the apology is accepted. Amy beams, promising that Gary won't be bothering him again. From that day on, the blonde girl becomes a permanent fixture on the mountainside, and our solitary dragon boy slowly gets used to having a sidekick. Back at the Talon residence, the front yard is suddenly crawling with armored soldiers and warhorses. The local commander has some grim news for Jake and Scarlet. Nearby villages are being hit by something anonymous, a mysterious threat that leaves no clear witnesses, only disoriented victims who can't even string a sentence together. Jake is fuming. This isn't just a monster problem, it's a crisis. Scarlet is instantly on high alert, pointing out how abnormal it is for these things to wander so close to human settlements. She's ready to gear up and ride out with her husband, but Jake puts his foot down. He reminds her that this is just a recon mission, and more importantly, someone needs to stay behind to prep Ray for his big academy test. After some comforting words and a promise to be back in a flash, Scarlet reluctantly agrees to hold down the fort. Cut to the mountainside, where Ray is absolutely gasping for air. He's still struggling with the lag between his dragon instincts and his toddler limbs, but he's interrupted by a different kind of heart rate spike. He catches a glimpse of Amy quietly reading a book nearby and feels a strange flutter in his chest. Panicked, he literally smacks himself in the face to snap out of it. Get it together, dragon. He walks over to Amy and tells her it's time to pack it up before the sun drops. They start the long trudge down the mountain, and Ray finally asks the question that's been bugging him. Do people bully you because you hang out with the cursed kid? Amy doesn't skip a beat. She tells him her friends talk trash, but honestly, that's their problem. In her book, red hair isn't scary, it's actually pretty cool. She looks him in the eye and tells him he's a special person regardless of his hair color, and that he should just focus on being himself. That last bit hits Ray like a lightning bolt. He flashes back to Gary's insult about doing something he's actually good at. Suddenly, it all clicks. He gives Amy a massive, genuine smile, shouts a quick thanks, and waves her goodbye with a brand new fire in his eyes. He's stopped trying to be a human swordsman, it's time to start being a dragon. As soon as he hits the door, Ray sprints straight for the storage room. He's done trying to fight like a clumsy human. It's time to fight like a predator. He drops to all fours, hands flat on the wooden floor, and grips the heavy steel sword firmly in his mouth. He activates level 1, and suddenly, the lag is gone. Moving on all limbs, he's a red-haired blur of teeth and steel, more agile, more explosive, and way more dangerous. He spots the opening, lunges with a primal force, and chill. Clears level 1 in a heartbeat. He's pumped, but he's not satisfied. If he's going to be a legend again, level 1 is just the warm-up. He reaches out and cranks the puppet up to level 2. The next morning, the house is buzzing with the sound of armored boots. Jake is gearing up for his mission when Ray wanders out, still half asleep. Jake kneels down, apologizing for having to head out, but promises he'll be back home in time for the big academy test. He gives Ray a final piece of advice: keep grinding on that puppet while I'm gone. With a proud smile, Jake tells him he truly believes Ray can beat the machine. Ray is just about to spill the beans about his level 1 victory, but the soldiers outside start shouting for Jake to move out. After a quick, mushy goodbye to Scarlet, Jake rides off. Ray just stands there with a smirk, thinking, it's fine. I'll just give Pops the shock of his life when he gets back. Fired up, Ray heads back to the mountains to train. On the way, he can't stop thinking about how Jake is going to react when he sees his clumsy son fighting like a wild beast. He knows he owes it all to Amy's tit-finding a way to work with his nature instead of fighting it. But as he feels that wave of gratitude, he catches himself. Wait, am I becoming soft? He quickly reminds himself that humans are generally terrible, but decides his parents and Amy are the limited edition exceptions who get a pass on his revenge plan. As he climbs higher, he keeps glancing around. Where is she? Is Amy not coming today? He realizes he's getting impatient for her to show up, and immediately tries to play it cool. Whatever. No distractions means better training, he lies to himself. He takes a deep breath, reminding his fluttering human heart that he's a mighty red dragon, and he absolutely cannot let himself be corroded by these annoying human emotions. Ray wakes up with a start, the sun already dipping low and his snoring echoing off the mountain rocks. He realizes he's in for a world-class nagging if he doesn't beat the darkness home. As he sprints down the slopes, he realizes he missed his chance to thank Amy today and makes a mental note to do it tomorrow. But as he hits the village outskirts, the vibe is all wrong. A panicked crowd is gathered, and Gary and Amy's father is practically interrogating the local blacksmith. The smith spills the tea. Gary's little squad of 4 showed up at his shop this morning to buy brand new weapons. He overheard the blonde-haired brat bragging that they were heading straight into the forest to hunt magic beasts for real. The parents are absolutely losing it. Bob and Kale's mother actually grabs the blacksmith by the collar, screaming at him for letting a bunch of kids wander into a death trap alone. The poor guy tries to defend himself, stammering that he thought they were just talking big. He didn't think they were actually suicidal. As the village prepares a search party with torches and gear, Ray starts walking toward his house, initially feeling zero sympathy. Karma's a real treat, he thinks. If they got turned into monster snacks, it just saves me the trouble of deleting them later. He's totally unbothered until he remembers Amy. He tries to shrug it off. She's got a foolish brother. That's her problem, he tells himself. But he can't shake the memory of how she treated him, like a person instead of a curse. He watches the villagers gather their materials, thinking about how pathetic and short human lifespans are. He tells himself he has his own path to walk, and that human emotions are for the weak. But then, a glimpse of Amy's face flashes in his mind. He stops in his tracks, wondering what this annoying feeling is that's making him second-guess a perfectly logical decision to stay in bed. Finally, he snaps. He turns around and bolts toward the forest. Amy's innocent, he grumbles to himself. Besides, I still haven't thanked her for helping me beat that puppet. I can't have her dying with me still owing her a debt. Deep in the shadows of the forest, the magic beast hunt has turned into a total nightmare. Kaylee and Bob are already face down on the grass, out cold. Gary is barely standing, trying to play the hero by shielding a sobbing Amy from a pair of mangled, growling beasts. He's shaking, sword in hand, telling his sister not to move an inch. Meanwhile, Ray is tearing through the underbrush, his dragon senses on high alert. He catches the sharp scent of blood in the air and stops to inspect a dead demonic wolf pup. The stomach wound is still warm, fresh blade work. They're close, he thinks, but the ground is a mess of panicked footprints and scuffle marks. He's trying to track them when a piercing scream cuts through the trees. Amy. He bursts into the clearing just in time to see an adult demonic wolf swat Gary like a fly, sending him crashing into a tree. The The beast turns its hungry eyes on Amy. She covers her head, squeezing her eyes shut and praying for a miracle. Clang! She opens her eyes to see a red-haired blur standing between her and certain death. Ray has shoved his blade directly into the wolf's snapping jaws. He spares a second to check on her, but the situation is grim. Gary and the others look like they've been through a meat grinder. Amy screams a warning, but the wolf is fast. Its claws rake across Ray's arm, drawing blood. "Ray!" she shrieks, terrified. "Relax," Ray grunts, barely flinching. "I'm not dying that easily." He knows he needs to get the beast away from the kids. He channels his inner predator, leaping for a high tree branch to lure the wolf into a chase. But the adult wolf isn't a puppet, lunges and bites the entire branch clean off. Ray hits the dirt hard, his mind racing. This body is pathetic, he fumes. I'm a legendary dragon, but this toddler frame can't handle a grown wolf in a head-on collision. The situation is looking grim. Ray is fighting for his life, realizing his current speed is a joke compared to his past glory. Back in the day, a demonic wolf wouldn't even be a snack, but now he's struggling to even leave a scratch. He glares at the beast, basically telling it, "Back off, wolf. These humans are my prey, and you don't touch what's mine." Ray knows he's reaching his limit. He drops into his predatory stance, sword gripped tight in his teeth, and lunges for the wolf's weak spot. He puts every ounce of toddler strength into a strike that slices right through the beast's eye. He's frustrated that it wasn't a one-shot kill in his past life. He would have deleted this thing with a sneeze, but he has to play the hand he's dealt. The wolf, now half blind and furious, lunges again. Ray waits, eyes locked on the target, and catches the perfect opening. He swings the blade, severing one of the wolf's legs and sending it crashing to the dirt. Just as he turns to check on Amy, the wolf tries one last desperate sneak attack. Ray's dragon instincts kick in. He dodges by a hair, counters with a final brutal strike to the throat, and finally puts the beast down for good. As he collapses from exhaustion, a strange glowing screen pops up in front of his fading vision. New ability, Lunklucht. O Benton, intermediate grade-based Kratestall. Ray stares at it, confused and annoyed. What is this useless Papa Bad? He wonders, before his focus shifts back to the unconscious kids. He knows he has to move. The scent of blood is basically a dinner bell for every other monster in the woods. Trembling with pain and bleeding out, he drags Gary onto his shoulders and scoops Amy into his arms. He looks back at Bob and Kale, still out cold in the grass. He's hit his absolute limit. Carrying 2 is a miracle. Carrying 4 is impossible. I did what I could, he thinks. The rest is up to fate. Panting heavily, Ray stumbles out of the tree line just as the village search party arrives with torches blazing. The villagers are stunned to see the cursed boy emerge from the death trap forest, dripping blood and carrying the merchant's children. "It's the Talon kid," someone shouts. Ray doesn't even have the energy to snap back at them. He just gasps out a final plea for the villagers to get healing for Gary and Amy before his vision goes black and he hits the ground cold. The atmosphere in the village square turns toxic faster than a dragon's breath. While most people would be throwing a parade for a 4-year-old who just 1v1'd a demonic wolf, this crowd is looking for a scapegoat. The second Bob and Kale's mother realizes her kids are still missing, she hits the panic button. Gary and Amy's father has to break the news that only his 2 made it out, and the realization sends her into a blind, desperate frenzy. She tries to pull a one-woman rescue mission and charges into the tree line, calling everyone else cowards. But the second those glowing predatory eyes blink at her from the shadows, she does a world-class U-turn and sprints back to the torches, shaking like a leaf. But instead of admitting she's terrified, she decides to project all that fear and rage onto the easiest target available, Ray. She lunges at the bleeding, half-conscious boy, grabbing him by the collar and screaming into his face. "Where are my sons? Where are Bob and Kale?" In her twisted grief logic, there's no way her perfect kids would ever go into the forest on their own. She decides Ray must have lured them in with some kind of cursed trickery. SLAP. The sound of her hand hitting Ray's face echoes through the silence. "I knew that red hair was a sign of calamity," she screeches, labeling him a walking disaster. The mob mentality kicks in instantly. The other villagers start whispering, nodding along. Yeah, how did a 4-year-old survive when the others didn't? He must have traded them to the monsters. They surround the poor kid, barking questions and forcing him to confess where he led the others. The mother, now completely unhinged, keeps smacking him over and over, demanding to know why he only chose to save Gary and Amy. Ray is slumped over, his vision swimming, his body broken from the fight and the trek. He's barely got enough breath in his lungs to keep his heart beating, let alone explain the concept of weight limits and combat exhaustion to a mob that's already decided he's a monster. Ray barely manages to whisper the truth. Your kids? They're still in the forest. The words hit like a bucket of ice water, but instead of gratitude for the truth, the woman's face contorts with pure, unadulterated hatred. You monster! She shrieks, throwing his battered body to the ground like a piece of trash. They are just children. How could you leave them there to die? She starts pleading with the other villagers to follow her into the woods, but the brave crowd suddenly finds a dozen excuses. Our own kids are waiting at home, they mutter, backing away from the dark tree line. Lying in the dirt, Ray's vision begins to blur. A bitter thought crosses his mind. Have they forgotten that I'm a child too? Or do they just not see me as human because of this hair? To them, he wasn't a 4-year-old boy who just risked his life. He was a beast that needed to be put down. The mother, now completely consumed by a vengeful frenzy, snatches a flaming torch from a bystander. She stalks toward Ray, her eyes wide and manic. I will never forgive you, she hisses. This red-haired monster needs to die. Ray watches her approach, a cold realization settling over him. These people, they're more terrifying than any beast I've ever fought. They are the true monsters. As she raises the torch to deliver the killing blow, Ray actually lets out a small, weary smile. Dying by a fire torch? How humiliating for a red dragon, he thinks, closing his eyes and waiting for the end. The torch swings down, but the impact never comes. Instead, a figure leaps into the gap. Clong. The torch bounces off a piece of metal. It's Gary. He's using his protective gear to shield the very boy he hated just yesterday. The villagers are stunned. Gary, have you gone mad? They scream. The monster has charmed him. Move out of the way so we can finish it. Gary doesn't budge. He meets their angry glares with the stare so deadly it actually makes the grown-ups flinch. You're the ones who've gone mad, he bellows, his voice cracking with emotion. You want to kill him based on nothing but your own fear? He stands guard like a human fortress, blocking anyone from reaching the bleeding boy behind him. Don't you dare touch him, Gary warns the mob, his knuckles white as he grips his shield. Ray is my savior, and if you want him, you have to go through me. The nightmare is a twisted mashup of the past and present. In his head, Ray sees the grieving mother screaming that he's a star of calamity, her hand coming down in a sharp slap, but then the scene shifts. Suddenly, he's back in his past life, surrounded by greedy mages demanding he sacrifice his life for their gain. He wakes up with a jolt, heart hammering against his ribs, only to see the one human who makes the world feel safe. His mother, Scarlet. She slumped over his bed, clutching his hand even in her sleep, her face stained with dried tears. Ray watches her, feeling that familiar dragon-sized conflict. Humans are so beautiful, yet so incredibly cruel. The moment he shifts, Scarlet is awake. She looks at him like she's seeing a ghost, tears of pure joy exploding as she pulls him into a crushing hug. Is this a dream? I thought you were never going to wake up, she sobs. Ray lets out a genuine scream of pain. His body is still a wreck, and Scarlet immediately fusses over him, scolding him through her tears that it serves him right for being so reckless. Ray asks the big question, how long was I out? A whole week, Scarlet reveals, wiping her eyes. She tells him she had no idea how she was going to face Jake if he didn't wake up. When Ray asks about the kids from the forest, the news is a mixed bag. Gary and Amy, they're banged up but fine. Bob and Kale, still missing. The village has already written them off as monster food. As Scarlet sits there, we see what really happened that night through her eyes. When she arrived at the forest, the scene was pure chaos. She saw Gary standing like a shield over her broken, bleeding son while the villagers barked for blood. Even as Gary screamed the truth that the kids went in alone and Ray was the hero, the mob wouldn't listen. They actually had the audacity to tell Scarlet that she should understand the grieving mother's pain and that Ray needed to take responsibility. That was the moment the kind mage disappeared. Scarlet looked at her unconscious son, and a cold, lethal fury took over. She activated her magic, the air around her crackling with enough power to level the entire square. She gave the mob a stare so predatory it made the woman who slapped Ray literally tremble in her boots. But even then, the poison didn't stop. As Scarlet gathered Ray into her arms to get him home, she could still hear the cowards whispering behind her back. We should have stayed away from that curse, they hissed. One man tried to quiet his friend, but the gossiper just grinned. What? I'm just talking about the forest. Scarlet didn't say a word. She just tightened her grip on her son and walked away from the people she once protected. leaving the true monsters behind in the glow of their torches. Scarlet gently pats Ray's head, her voice soft as she tells him not to carry the weight of the world on his tiny shoulders. She reveals that Gary actually stepped up and told her the whole truth, how Ray was the real hero in those woods. "You were amazing, Ray," she whispers before heading off to grab him some much-needed food. Once the door clicks shut, Ray finally focuses on that mysterious floating screen that popped up during the boss fight. He wonders if this is a standard human HUD or something much darker. He reaches out and taps a specific skill, Blessing of the Dragon's Eye. Instantly, his vision shifts. The world turns into a flow of raw data and mana's signatures. He catches a glimpse of his mother's energy status through the wall and nearly jumps out of his skin. I remember this. This was one of his peak draconic abilities. He figured that after failing the aptitude test, he was stuck being a magic list dud forever. But it turns out his powers are just on a slow unlock schedule. He checks his inventory and finds that intermediate grade beast crystal he looted from the wolf, realizing his system rewards him for every kill. But the celebration is cut short. A thick, acrid smoke starts curling under the door. Ray starts coughing, lunges for the window, and sees a nightmare unfolding. The villagers are screaming that his house is on fire. Scarlet bursts into the room, panic in her eyes, and tells Ray they need to move now. The flames are already devouring the hallway. But Scarlet isn't just a mom, she's a high-level mage. She wraps Ray in a protective mana barrier and uses her wind magic to blast a path through the inferno. As he clings to his mother, Ray activates his dragon's eye to scan the crowd outside. He's looking for a mana signature, a spark anything. And there she is. Standing in the shadows with a flickering torch and a face twisted by madness is Bob and Kale's mother. She didn't just want to vent, she wanted to burn the calamity out of existence. The villagers watch the Talon house go up in flames, and instead of helping, they just start nodding. "It's the curse," they whisper. "If that red-haired kid stays, the whole village is going to be ash." Scarlet doesn't listen to the gossip. With a massive surge of power, she waves her hand, and the flames are scattered like autumn leaves in a gale. The fire is out, but the damage is done. The whispers continue, louder now, calling for the monster to leave. Ray is crushed. He hears every word, every insult, every wish for his death. Scarlet pulls him close, asking if he's scared. But Ray just forces a smile and tells her how cool her magic was. But inside, the reincarnated protector is gone. As they walk back into their charred home, Ray's blood begins to boil with a heat hotter than the fire that just tried to kill him. "They wanted to burn us alive," he realizes. "They don't just fear me, they want me dead." The last shred of his heroic protector instinct snaps. His draconic fury is back, and this time, the entire human race is on the list. Revenge isn't just a plan anymore. It's a promise. Despite his wound still being fresh, Ray's draconic drive won't let him rest. Scarlet warns him to go easy, but he's already out the door and heading for the forest to field test his new system. With his dragon's eye active, the forest becomes a hunting ground. He spots beginner-level magic monkey chilling in a tree, mid-snack, and sneaks up like a true apex predator. Slice. By the time he's done, 20 beginner beasts have been deleted. However, the drop rates are frustratingly low after all that work. The system only coughs up 2 beast crystals. Ray huffs, wondering if he should just absorb them himself, when he spots a tiny, black, demonic wolf pup whimpering near its fallen family. Ray reaches out to pat the little guy, telling it it's a solo act from now on, when a notification pings. Tamming, Chance, black to midget wolf pup. Curious, he clicks accept. To his absolute shock, the taming works, but instead of following him like a dog, the pup literally vanishes into his own body. Ray freaks out, threatening to uninstall the dragon system if this ruins his stats, but the little dragon icon on the screen just nods it's a summon, not a parasite. He unlocks another skill, but puts it on the back burner. He has a debt to settle first. Using his dragon's eye, Ray scans for the missing kids. He tracks their scent and mana to a grim-looking cave on a hill. Inside, it's a horror. Show skulls and half-eaten corpses litter the floor. He finds 2 bodies that match Bob and Kale, or what's left of them. The beasts have picked them clean, leaving nothing but bones and shredded clothes. Ray doesn't flinch. He just grabs their clothes as proof of identity, tosses them in a basket, and heads home. Back at the house, Scarlet is on a warpath. She's nagging him about his injuries, his dirty clothes, and his rebellious phase. Ray tries to act tough, telling her to stop being such a nag, but she shuts him down instantly. "Your father is coming home in a few days," she reveals. "You can take it up with him." Ray's eyes light up. He can't wait to show Jake the all-fours combat style he mastered. But his excitement is cut short when Scarlet lets out a motherly roar, ordering him to fix his blanket and go to sleep right now. Even with the soul of a legendary dragon, Ray realizes that the instinctual fear of an angry mother is a universal constant. He dives under the covers, realizing that some human bloodline traits are more powerful than any magic. At the stroke of midnight, Ray's eyes snap open. The hero the village wanted is dead. Now only the dragon remains. He quietly slips into the storage room, grabbing the basket of shredded clothes he recovered from the cave, and a second bucket one he's filled to the brim with fresh beast blood. Across the village, a frantic knocking echoes at Bob and Kale's front door. Their mother rushes down the stairs, her heart leaping with the desperate hope that her boys have finally come home. She flings the door open, calling their names into the night, but the porch is empty. Instead, lying in the dirt is a single, tattered shirt. She recognizes it instantly. It's Kale's. Beside the clothes, a trail of fresh footprints leads away from the house. Consumed by a manic mix of grief and hope, she follows the trail, screaming that she's coming to save them. The tracks lead her deeper and deeper into the suffocating darkness of the forest. She pauses, her lantern flickering as the realization of where she is sinks in. But then she spots it. Bob's jacket, hanging from a low-hanging branch. She sprints toward the tree, sobbing their names, completely blind to the shadow perched directly above her. High in the branches, Ray watches with cold, reptilian detachment. As she passes directly underneath, he releases the rope. Splat. The bucket tips, drenching the woman from head to toe in thick, pungent beast blood. The woman screams, clawing at her face, blinded by the crimson liquid. "Who did this? Show yourself," she shrieks. Ray drops from the tree, landing silently in the center of her lantern's glow. "The red-haired monster is here," he says, his voice devoid of any childhood warmth. The woman's face contorts with a familiar, ugly rage. "Give them back! You brought this calamity on us! Give me my children!" Ray doesn't move. He doesn't need to. In the darkness surrounding them, dozens of glowing yellow eyes begin to pop open. The scent of the blood coating her is like a dinner bell for every predator in the woods. While the monsters steer clear of the draconic aura radiating from Ray, they see the woman as nothing but a bleeding carcass. Ray begins to step back, merging into the shadows of the trees. He watches with a deadly, unwavering expression as the beasts close in. There are no more slaps, no more insults, and no more curses. As the first beast lunges and the blood splatters across the forest floor, Ray realizes he doesn't feel like a monster. He feels like himself. The debt is paid. The forest has been fed. And as the screams finally fade into the night, the last dragon of the world turns his back on the carnage and walks home. The next morning, the village is a different place. The whispers have shifted from mockery to absolute dread. After the mother of Bob and Kale disappeared into the night, the rumor mill decided that the curse isn't just bad luck, it's a death sentence. As Ray walks through the town square, he doesn't hide his murderous gaze. He stares down the very people who were calling for his head yesterday. Terrified, the villagers scramble to be nice, stuttering out good mornings and praising him for his hard work. Ray just smirks as he passes. He realizes the rumors have changed, and for the first time, he actually likes them. Fear is a much better currency than pity, but the mood shifts when he reaches home. The yard is packed with war horses, and his heart leaps Pops is back. But the second he steps inside, the excitement dies. His mother, Scarlet, is a wreck, sobbing uncontrollably. "What happened?" Ray asks, his voice cold with worry. Scarlet chokes out that Jake is home, but he's gravely ill. Ray rushes to his father's side and activates his dragon's eye. His jaw nearly drops. Even in his past life as a legendary dragon, he's never seen a status screen this high, but it's flickering. Jake is barely hanging on. Delirious. Jake mumbles a warning through cracked lips. "The shadows? They'll kill everyone." The mages who brought him back explain the grim reality. Jake was hit by a plague of shadows while defending a villager from a shadow beast. Ray is baffled. Shadow beasts? He doesn't remember these things from his past life. Something has fundamentally broken in the world since he died. As the mages apologize for not being able to do more, Ray consults his dragon system. He knows a high-tier spell that could dispel any curse or black magic, but it's currently locked behind a massive level wall. To unlock it, he needs to hunt, and not just monkeys. He needs a high-ranked kill, but looking at his tiny 4-year-old hands, he knows he's not ready for a shadow beast. Not yet. He turns to his mother, his expression hardening. "If I join the Avery Knight Academy, will I get stronger?" Scarlet wipes her eyes and nods. "That's where your father became the man he is. You'll be a warrior, Ray." Ray's resolve is set. He's going to ace that entrance exam, join the academy, and find the power to burn the shadows off his father. Scarlet pulls him into a desperate hug, telling him she believes in him with everything she has. Meanwhile, in a massive ancient cathedral far from the village, a group of hooded priests gathers in the dim light. The Master Elder stands before them, his voice echoing with the weight of centuries. The prophecy has been foretold, he announces. A great change is coming. The priests murmur, wondering what kind of change could shake the foundations of the world. The elder's mind is fixed on one image, a red-haired boy. Is he our redemption, or is he the calamity? The elder muses. The future is unwritten. He turns to his subordinates with the final chilling order. Alert the knights. Find the boy. If he's our savior, lead him. But if he is the calamity, destroy him before he wakes up. The big day has finally arrived. The gates of the Avery Knight Academy are wide open, and the energy is electric. A massive crowd is gathered, not just to see the candidates, but to catch a glimpse of the Academy's legendary knights. As the knights march in, the crowd goes absolutely wild. Leading the pack is Knight Delbert, whose charm is apparently just as lethal as his blade. The local girls are basically losing their minds, gossiping about how he's even more handsome than the rumors suggested. Since the knights only make a public appearance once a year for the exams, this is the celebrity event of the season. With the cheers still ringing, the knights reach the competition grounds. Sir Winford, looking every bit the stern veteran, steps forward to welcome the kids. After introducing the fan favorites, Sir Delbert and the imposing Sir Bernardo, Winford lays down the law. They are the proctors today, and if any of these kids want a seat in the academy, they'd better bring more than just a big ego. The infamous training puppet is wheeled into position. Winford calls for the first candidate, and a kid swaggered up, looking like he already owned the place. He figures he can just brute force the wooden dummy and makes a confident charge. In less than a second, the puppet counters, sending the kid flying across the dirt like a rag doll. Test over. One hit, one fail. His parents, who were screaming their lungs out a second ago, are suddenly very, very quiet. While the second candidate is called up, Ray is completely locked in. He's replaying everything Jake taught him about how these puppets operate. He looks up at the wooden machine, noting its eerie stillness. It doesn't move until you do, but its reaction speed and defensive counters are on par with the trained adult. Ray isn't intimidated, though. He's fought this thing in a dark storage room while his own house was being threatened. He's not here to just pass. He's here to show these knights that a red dragon doesn't play by toddler rules. The question is, how many levels is he going to show them before they realize they've invited a predator into their school? Ray's dragon senses are tingling, and it's not just instinct. Collecting those beast crystals has cranked his hearing up to a superhuman level. From across the field, he eavesdrops on the knights' private conversation. Delbert is acting like a total elitist, whining that this whole trip is a waste of time. He scoffs that knights should only come from noble blood, and calls the local kids filthy commoners. Winford tries to play the good cop, telling him to chill out, but Delbert is already over it, especially since kid after kid is getting wrecked by the puppet. That is, until Gary steps up. The blonde boy actually holds his own and passes the test, flashing a cocky smile to the crowd. While the villagers start hyping him up as the next big thing, Ray is just cringing in the background. What is this kid doing, he thinks, embarrassed for him. Then the mood shifts. The proctor calls the next name, Ray Tollin. Every eye in the place locks onto him. Winford and Delbert straighten up, realizing this is the prophecy boy their elder warned them about. The villagers, of course, start their usual routine hissing about cursed blood and blaming Ray for Jake's illness. They call his hair blood red and laugh at the idea of a monster becoming a knight. Ray doesn't give a damn. He casually flips his hood back, revealing his fiery hair to the world, and walks onto the stage. Bernardo tells him to get ready, but Delbert decides he wants to see if the calamity is real or just hype. He scoffs at the prophecy, and behind everyone's back he cranks the puppet straight to level 3. Bernardo tries to stop him, but it's too late. The wooden machine erupts into motion, moving with lightning speed that would be fatal for any normal child. Bernardo and Winford scream at Ray to get out of the way before he gets killed. Shing! In a literal flash, Ray moves. Before the knights can even finish their warning, the puppet's head is spinning through the air. Ray stands there, sword drawn, as the decapitated wooden skull thuds onto the grass. The entire plaza goes dead silent. The villagers' jaws hit the dirt. Even the elite knights are staring at the headless level 3 puppet like they've seen a ghost. Bernardo is too stunned to speak, but Winford finds his voice first, looking at the other knights with a Told you so, smirk. Congratulations. Bernardo finally stammers, officially announcing the result. You pass. In the crowd, Scarlett is beaming with pride, her heart finally finding a reason to hope. Meanwhile, Gary is standing there in absolute disbelief. He thought he was the star of the show, but he just realized he's in the presence of a different breed of predator. Ray Talon isn't just joining the academy, he's coming to take over. The day of departure arrives, and the atmosphere at the Talon house is heavy. Ray stands by his father's bedside, looking at the man who taught him everything in this new life. Even with the soul of an ancient dragon, Ray can't help but get emotional. He leans in and makes a silent promise. Don't worry, Pops. I'm going to find the cure for this shadow plague, no matter what it takes. Just as he's about to head out, Scarlett stops him. She's holding a small, elegant Penna family heirloom passed down through generations. She pins it to his clothes, a charm for good luck and a reminder of home. Ray tries to maintain his tough dragon facade, telling her he's a man now and she needs to look after herself. But Scarlett just pulls him into one last hug, her eyes welling with tears. She promises him that no matter what happens at the academy, he always has a place to come back to. With a final wave, Ray heads to the transport cart. He climbs inside, wondering who his traveling companion will be, only to come face to face with Gary. The silence inside the cart is thick enough to cut with a sword. They both sit there, looking everywhere but at each other, purely embarrassed. Ray realizes they were likely the only two from the village to make the cut. Finally, Gary can't take the tension anymore. He takes a deep breath and bows his head low. I'm sorry, Ray, he blurted out. He admits he was a total idiot for bullying him and slapping him back then. Ray is momentarily stunned by the sincerity, but then shrugs it off with a smirk. It's fine, he thinks. He's just a 5-year-old kid. He tells Gary to forget about it, noting that Gary saved his life from the mob, so they're even now. Gary blinks, looking confused. What do you mean, just a 5-year-old? You're the same age as me. Ray coughs, realizing he let his ancient dragon inner monologue slip out again. He quickly pivots and asks about Amy, wondering why she wasn't at the town square to see them off. Wait, you didn't know? Gary asks. She left for the Roland Magic Academy this morning. Ray is caught off guard. Roland Magic Academy? He's slightly annoyed and maybe a little hurt that she never mentioned she had the aptitude for magic. One friend is heading to a school for mages. His father is cursed by shadows, and he's stuck in a cramped carriage with his former bully. The journey to becoming a legend has officially begun. The cart jerks to a violent halt, nearly sending Ray and Gary tumbling into each other. Outside, a thick, unnatural fog has swallowed the road, turning the bright day into a gray nightmare. The boys peel back the curtains just in time to hear Sir Winford's voice booming through the mist, demanding that whatever is hiding out there identify itself immediately. A figure stumbles out of the gloom. It's a girl, her clothes torn and her face pale with exhaustion. She introduces herself as Anne Woodwork, an adventurer from the Traceless Guild, before collapsing directly into Sir Bernardo's arms. With her last bit of strength, she gasps out the terrifying truth. Her entire team was wiped out by shadow beasts. The knights are visibly shaken. Bernardo is baffled. They haven't seen a single magic beast on this route. So why would the high-tier shadow beasts suddenly be prowling here? Delbert, ever the arrogant one, just scoffs that the monsters probably hid from them out of fear. Winford ignores him and tells Anne they are heading toward Rennie. Since it's on their path, they'll bring her along for safety. Gary's ears perk up at the name. Rennie? I thought we were going to the Knight Academy? Delbert looks at the boys like they're idiots. Don't be stupid. You think we'd send kids straight to the front line? The boys freeze. The front line? Delbert explains that the Avery Knight Academy isn't just a school, it's a fortress sitting directly on the border, a place under constant threat of attack. Winford clarifies that they'll be spending the next decade in the city of Rennie, mastering the basics of combat before they are ever allowed to set foot in the actual academy. A decade. 10 years. For a dragon, 10 years is an afternoon nap. But as Ray looks at his small human hands, his heart sinks. 10 years? Pops doesn't have 10 years. If he has to wait a decade just to start his real studies, Jake will be long gone. While Ray is calculating the timeline, Gary is spiraling into anxiety. He realizes the pattern. Ray's father was attacked, and now this elite huntress is the sole survivor of a similar massacre. Even the legendary knights look worried. Gary turns to Ray, his voice trembling. If even the proctors are shocked, what are we supposed to do if those things find us right now? A sharp crack echoes through the fog, and Ray's dragon instincts scream at him before the knights even reach for their hilts. Winfred bellows a command for everyone to brace themselves. Something massive is breathing in the mist. Emerging from the darkness is the Drop Bear King, a creature that was already a nightmare in its natural form, but has now been twisted into a towering obsidian shadow beast. The battle turns chaotic instantly. The beast is deceptively fast, lunging from the brush to catch Sir Bernardo off guard. The knight is pinned, unable to dodge in time, when a red-haired blur streaks across the battlefield. Ray doesn't hesitate. He intercepts the strike, his blade biting deep enough to force the monster back and save Bernardo's life. The knight is stunned, but quickly barks at the kids to get back and protect themselves. Winfred, however, is uneasy. He notices the Drop Bear King has stopped its assault and is simply standing there, looming like a statue of death. It's waiting for something, he mutters, his grip tightening on his sword. Nearby, Gary is way out of his league. He's struggling to fend off the smaller shadow beasts, and one rakes its claws across his arm. Before the boy can be finished off, Ray appears again, slashing his sword across the beast's back and pulling Gary to safety. Stay sharp, Ray warns. These aren't those mountain wolves. These things are fueled by the shadows. Suddenly, the Drop Bear King lets out a roar so visceral it sends a physical shockwave through the clearing. The sheer force of the sound flings the knights backward, and Gary is pinned to the ground by the pressure. Ray digs his heels in, his dragon soul refusing to buckle, but even he realizes this monster is on a completely different level of power. Then, the impossible happens. The massive shadow beast raises a clawed hand, pointing directly at Sir Winfred. Its jaw unhinges, and a raspy, ethereal voice crawls out of its throat. You will never defeat the shadows. The darkness will swallow this continent whole. The battlefield freezes. Talking monsters are unheard of, even in the legends of the old world. The knights are utterly paralyzed by the sight of a beast displaying human-like intelligence. The king continues its grim prophecy. You are destined to fail. Everyone around you is destined to die. Ray is left flabbergasted. This isn't just a mindless plague or a stray monster. This is an organized invasion. The shadow beast wasn't just attacking. It was delivering a declaration of war. As the knights struggle to process the threat, Ray realizes that the prophecy of calamity might be the only thing standing between the world and total darkness. The decade-long training plan in Rennie just went out the window. If the shadows are talking, there's no time left to be a student. The giant shadow beast lets out one last rumbling growl before leaping into the canopy, disappearing into the fog as quickly as it arrived. A heavy silence follows until Winfred finally lowers his sword, exhaling a breath he'd been holding. We should be grateful, he mutters, his voice tight. If that thing had chosen to stay and fight, none of us would be leaving this forest in one piece. While the knights recover, Ray's dragon system pings, notifying him that he's obtained another crystal from the smaller beasts he took down. But his mind is elsewhere. He can't shake the feeling that when the shadow beast spoke, its hollow eyes were locked onto him. It felt like a direct message to a fellow ancient power. Winfred walks over, offering a nod of genuine respect to Ray and Gary. You both held your ground better than most grown men. You're going to make fine knights one day. Ray looks up, his expression unreadable. Sir, do beasts usually talk like that? Winfred shakes his head grimly. Never. Shadow beasts shouldn't even be this far into the border, let alone speaking our tongue. This is a first for all of us. He watches Ray closely, unsettled by how calm the boy is. Most 4-year-olds would be catatonic after seeing a talking monster, but Ray just looks thoughtful. Off to the side, Delbert is seething. He watches Ray with a look of pure disgust, his elitist pride stung by the fact that a commoner child just performed better in a crisis than he did. Eventually, the group reaches the gates of Rennie. The town is a fortress. The usual relaxed atmosphere has been replaced by iron and steel. There are more guards posted on the walls than Ray has ever seen in one place. Winfred pulls his horse up to a sentry, demanding to know why the town is on such high alert. The huntress, Anne, offers a final thanks to the knights for saving her life before slipping away to find her guild. Meanwhile, the guard delivers the grim news. The Allure Kingdom has issued an Amber Alert. Every city on the continent is under heavy surveillance. Something is coming, sir. Winfred's heart sinks. An Amber Alert means the kingdom believes they are on the literal verge of a total crisis. He looks over at the red-haired boy sitting quietly in the back of the cart. Is he really the one? He wonders. The child of prophecy who will save us, or the one who will watch us burn? Ray, oblivious to Winfred's stare, looks toward the horizon. He thinks of Jake lying in that bed, fighting the shadows in his own blood. He clenches his small fist, the resolve of a dragon hardening in his chest. Everything has just begun, he thinks. Hold on, Pops. Just wait for me. I'm gonna become a knight and then I'm coming back to tear those shadows out of the world. 10 years have passed, and the sleepy town of Rennie has become the training ground for the next generation of defenders. Inside the academy, the atmosphere is focused, and the students have grown from clumsy toddlers into disciplined candidates. The professor stands at the front of the lecture hall, testing the class on the fundamental mechanics of combat. Most knights cannot cast magic, she notes. So tell me, what is the command over the other ability called? Gary, now 15, and looking every bit the aspiring knight, doesn't hesitate. He raises his hand and explains that knights utilize chi. By channeling and practicing chi, a warrior can superhumanly enhance their physical body and sharpen their senses. He adds that those who truly master it can even momentarily shatter the natural limits of the human frame. The teacher nods, impressed. Well prepared, Gary. She shifts her gaze toward a specific seat for the next question. Now, tell me why chi can only be safely practiced after the age of 15. Ray? Gary looks over, but the seat next to him is conspicuously empty. Ray has clearly decided that a lecture hall is no place for a dragon. Sensing the awkward silence, Gary nervously covers for his friend. He just stepped out to the restroom, Professor. The teacher moves on, calling on Sylvia, a striking girl with silver hair whose presence in the classroom is as sharp as a blade. She answers with textbook precision. Practicing chi subjects the human body to extreme internal pressure. Since human organs aren't fully developed until age 15, attempting to channel chi any earlier would likely cause permanent fatal damage to the body. As the teacher continues the lesson, reminding the students that these theories are the difference between life and death on the front lines, Sylvia's gaze lingers on Ray's empty desk. While the rest of the class is busy learning why they can't use power yet, the reincarnated monster is likely out in the world, already breaking every rule they've just discussed. Deep in the woods outside Rennie, the missing student is finally revealed. Ray isn't playing truant to slack off. He's out in the field with his black demonic wolf, Pup, now a fully grown lethal predator. The wolf tears through a massive magic boar with a single slash, and the familiar ping of the dragon system echoes in Ray's mind. He absorbs the beginner-grade beast crystal, feeling the familiar hum of power. He pats his tamed companion, satisfied with the haul, and decides to head back before the academy realizes he's been in the restroom for 3 hours. But his exit is cut short by the sound of hooves. Sir Winford trots into the clearing, looking remarkably unchanged by the decade. He eyes the dead beast on the ground with a raised eyebrow. I was wondering who is thinning out the local wildlife, Winford chuckles. I'm surprised you managed to slip past the heavy guards, Ray. As they walk back toward the city, the two catch up. Winford marvels at how much Ray has grown. The tiny red-haired toddler is now a tall, formidable young man. Ray playfully asks Winford how he hasn't aged a day in 10 years. But the knight just smirks and tells him a man's age is a secret. The mood turns a bit more serious as Winford mentions he's heard the rumors from the instructors about Ray's extracurricular hunting trips. Ray shrugs it off, admitting that since the Amber Alert was finally called off, the security has loosened up enough for him to escape the boredom of the classroom. I'd rather move my body than rot in a desk, Ray says bluntly. Winford warns him that he's lucky. If the outer line guards had caught him, they wouldn't have cared that he was a student. Then, he softens his tone. I stopped by your house recently, Ray. Ray's heart skips. Winford reassures him that Jake is still hanging on. His condition hasn't gotten any worse thanks to Scarlett's tireless care. He delivers a message from his mother. Don't worry about your father too much. Focus on yourself. Ray nods and thanks him, but internally, the frustration is boiling over. For 10 years, he has pushed his human body to the absolute limit. He has hunted, trained, and grinded every day. Yet the dragon system has been stingy. No new high-tier abilities. No cure for the shadow plague. Despite being a literal dragon in a human shell, he feels powerless to save the man who raised him. Seeing the shadow fall over Ray's face, Winford stops. He lets out a boisterous laugh and pulls Ray into a tight, one-armed side hug, gripping him so firmly that the legendary dragon actually gets flustered. Buck up, kid. You've got a long road ahead of you. I can't wait to see how the other kids have turned out. But the warm welcome Ray was hoping for is replaced by a shouting match at the entrance. Alan, the academy instructor, is currently trying to lift a guard off the ground by his collar. The Amber Alert being over is no excuse. Alan roars. That red-haired boy is special. You need to know where he is at all times. Winford and Ray stroll into the hall right into the middle of the drama. When Alan turns around and sees his special student casually walking in with a high-ranking knight, his last nerve finally snaps. His face goes beet red, and he launches into a legendary lecture. I told you not to leave my sight. How many times is this month? He punctuates his frustration by smacking Ray upside the head. Ray, acting every bit the rebellious teenager, hides behind Winford's cape while rubbing the new bump on his skull. Look, the alert is over. I can do what I want, Ray mutters. Besides, you're about to be free of me anyway. You should be happy. As long as you are my student, you follow my rules. Alan barks back. Winford just stands there, nodding to himself and thinking that Ray definitely had this coming. The bickering is cut short as a horn blares throughout the Rennie town square. An emergency meeting has been called. Ray trudges over to the gathering with a massive lump on his head. Gary spots him and smirks. Got caught this time, huh? Just unlucky, Ray grumbles. Nearby, Sylvia steals a quick glance at Ray and immediately turns a deep shade of pink, quickly looking away before he can notice. Once the students are lined up, a squire named Lancey steps forward. He looks drop-dead serious, his eyes scanning the young recruits. Listen up. I am taking you all to the Avery Knight Academy. The journey will take 7 days through territory that is anything but safe. He pauses, his voice dropping an octave. If you don't want to end up as monster bait, you will follow my orders to the letter. No exceptions. As the carriages prepare to roll out, the local guards are already sweating. When Winford casually mentions the route goes straight through the swamp, the guards nearly have a heart attack. That path is a death trap for kids, they argue. But Winford isn't interested in a field trip. He looks at the rows of students and firmly states that a knight who hasn't faced the challenge isn't a knight at all. Besides, the academy isn't just testing the kids, it's testing their resolve. The next morning, the convoy departs from the Rennie town gates. Inside one of the carriages, the air is thick with the sound of Ray snoring like a chainsaw. A bald, red-headed boy named Kyle, clearly not the brightest blade in the armory, starts whining about the travel time. Why aren't we just using a teleporter? We'd be there in 5 seconds. Another boy agrees, grumbling about the unnecessary trouble. That's when a student named Dan snaps at them. Because Avery Knight Academy doesn't have a teleporter, you idiot? Kyle, offended, scoffs. What, are they broke? Even the Roland Academy has teleporters. Is Avery just a budget school? Someone clearly hasn't been paying attention in class. A sharp feminine voice cuts through the chatter. It's Sylvia. She doesn't even look up as she begins her lecture. She explains that the academy is a frontline fortress on the border. If they installed a teleporter there, they'd be hand-delivering a backdoor to every foreign invader and shadow beast on the continent. If the academy's defenses ever slipped for even a second, a teleporter would be an open invitation for an army to pop up right in the heart of the kingdom. The other students fall silent, realizing the gravity of where they're actually going. This isn't just a school, it's a shield. As the carriage falls quiet, Sylvia's composed mask slips. She steals another look at Ray, her cheeks turning a soft pink. However, she nearly jumps out of her skin and turns away when she realizes Gary is watching her with an arched eyebrow. Meanwhile, the child of prophecy is completely oblivious to the tactical debate and the romantic tension, peacefully dozing off with his head resting right on Gary's shoulder. The carriages finally pull up to the jagged skeletal remains of castle ruins overlooking the marshlands. It's dawn. The light is gray and heavy, and the students are immediately put to work setting up camp. While they're wrestling with tent poles and canvas, Gary nudges Ray. Dude, the silver-haired girl Sylvia has been staring a hole in the back of your head all morning. Ray, ever the skeptic, isn't convinced. What's there to look at? Gary just smirks and tells him to see for himself. They both turn at the exact same time, catching Sylvia dead in the act. She panics, bumbling her tent stakes and nearly collapsing her entire setup in a flurry of silver hair and embarrassment. Ray shrugs it off. It's probably just the red hair again. Nah, Gary counters. Kyle, Ian, and the twins are all redheads. Nobody's staring at them. Admit it, Ray, she's a top-tier beauty. You really gonna just ignore that? Ray doesn't even blink. He's got ancient dragon problems on his mind, and teenage romance isn't one of them. Meanwhile, Dan and Monk decide to do some unauthorized exploring behind the ruins. They're immediately hit with a stench so foul it makes dead rats smell like perfume. They peer out at the sticky swamp, a vast bubbling expanse of muck that seems to stretch into infinity. Suddenly, Lancey appears behind them like a ghost. That's the swamp, he says, his voice cold. And if you don't want the sharp worms down there to treat your legs like an all-you-can-eat buffet, I suggest you get your tents up and stay inside them. Night falls, the campfire crackles, and the camp settles into an uneasy sleep. But the dragon of the classroom doesn't do bedtimes. Having scouted the guard rotations during dinner, Ray slips out of the ruins like a shadow. He's ready for a real hunt until a hand clamps onto his wrist. He turns to find Sylvia, her face pale with worry. Where do you think you're going? Hunting, Ray says plainly. Are you insane? She whispers fiercely. This isn't Rennie anymore, Ray. You could run into an intermediate rank beast out there. The knights are too far away to hear you scream. Ray calmly jerks his hand away. I'll be fine. An intermediate rank isn't a problem for me. He turns and disappears into the dark fog of the swamp, leaving Sylvia standing alone in the ruins, her heart heavy with a mix of sadness and fear. She's starting to realize that the boy she's crushing on isn't just talented, he's something entirely different and far more dangerous. The sun hasn't even fully cleared the horizon before the knights are ripping open carriage curtains and barking at everyone to move. Rise and shine, lazy bones! Last one out gets a special punishment. Gary bolts upright, heart racing, only to come face to face with Ray, who is lying there with his crimson eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Gah! You scared the life out of me, Gary yelps. Did you even sleep? Ray, who literally just crawled back into the carriage minutes ago after a bloody night in the swamp, gives a non-committal grunt. I slept fine. I'm not an idiot. Gary isn't buying it for a second, but he doesn't have time to argue. He scrambles outside to avoid the knight's wrath. Alone for a moment, Ray pulls up his dragon system and smirks. The night hunt was a success. He calculates that if he keeps this pace, he'll max out his intake of beginner beast crystals before they even reach the academy gates. Once he hits that cap, he can finally start absorbing the intermediate ones, which should be the key to breaking his 10-year plateau. The journey resumes, the carriages rattling deeper into an eerie, fog-choked forest. The atmosphere shifts. Up front, Sir Winfred raises a hand, signaling the convoy to halt. He shares a silent, grim nod with Lancey. This is the spot. Without a word, the knights pull back, leaving the carriages isolated. This is the baptism by fire, Winfred promised. The silence is broken by a sickening squelch. The ground underneath the carriages begins to heave. Suddenly, the earth erupts. Massive, segmented sharpworms burst from the soil, their jagged mandibles snapping. One carriage is nearly flipped as a worm lurches upward, disemboweling a horse in a spray of gore. Panic explodes. Students are screaming, some paralyzed by the sight of the blood. But Gary and Ray move in sync. They both vault from their seats, swords clearing their scabbards in a single motion. Ray begins a cold, efficient harvest, his blade a blur of steel and dragon-honed instinct. Gary, taking a leadership role, leaps in front of a terrified girl just as a worm lunges for her throat, ripping the monster apart midair. He wipes the ichor from his face and bellows over the chaos. Stay focused. Sharp worms hunt in swarms. There are hundreds more under us. He begins barking orders, channeling the training he's absorbed over the last decade. Get off the carts. Move to the clearing. Form teams of 3, back to back. Don't leave a single hole in the defense or they'll drag you under. While everyone else is treating this worm-mashing session like the end of the world, Kyle is vibrating with enough main character energy to power a small city. Our boy Ray, however, is busy using his Dragonite to confirm that these sharpworms are merely low-level pests. Boring. He looks up and spots the 6 missing knights perched on a cliff like judgmental gargoyles, clearly grading the chaos. Deciding a nap is far more productive than swatting bugs. Ray wanders back to the carriage. Dan catches him and loses his mind. Ray, the formation! Where are you going? Ray just lets out a yawn that could swallow a horse. Relax. They're beginner rank. You guys have the numbers, and honestly, you don't need me. Up on the cliff, the knights watch Ray's tactical retreat and instantly label him a coward, penciling him in for a pathetic red belt. The knights then turn their binoculars to the real overachievers. There's Gary, who's out there deleting worms with single, clinical swings, moving his body with zero wasted effort, an easy white belt candidate. Then there's Sylvia, who's apparently too silver-haired protagonist to even get her clothes dirty. She's dodging and slicing, with such perfect posture that the knights are half convinced she's doing a photo shoot. Winfred notes that she's steady as a rock once she sees an opening. It's game over for the bugs. Lancey is practically ready to ask Sylvia what laundry detergent she uses because, despite the carnage, her clothes remain annoyingly spotless. But the fashion show is cut short when the ground pulls an extreme makeover and explodes, birthing a colossal worm that looks like all the tiny ones decided to merge into a giant nightmare buffet. Panic levels hit 100%. One kid's legs decide to stop working, and as he trips and prepares to become a worm snack, Ian, the red-haired unit, leaps in. Fueled by pure don't touch my friend's rage, Ian starts ripping the monster's tentacles apart with his bare muscles like he's pulling apart string cheese. The twins, Sloth and Badger, join the party, slicing through the giant bug like absolute pros, while Kyle is still in the corner playing Fruit Ninja, stabbing away and announcing he's hit a 45-kill streak. High on the cliff, the knights are actually stunned. They're just standing there with their hands in their pockets because the red-haired squad, well, everyone except a napping Ray, has the situation completely under control. Once the giant worm is turned into confetti, Ian immediately checks on his teammates. Winford watches from above, practically swooning over Ian's potential, calling him a total gem, who has the muscles of a beast and the heart of a team captain. Mission accomplished, no casualties, and Ian is officially the night's new favorite student. While the rest of the squad was busy celebrating their survival, Ray was back in the carriage, dozing off like he hadn't just skipped a life or death battle for a nap. Once the team piled back in, Gary immediately started playing the worried parrot, lecturing him on how the forest was a death trap and how no one would have been there to save his lazy hide. Ray just let out a luxurious stretch and shrugged, muttering that he was simply too sleepy and that the knights were watching the whole time anyway. Gary could only sigh, realizing Ray had officially gone lone wolf. While up on the cliff, a deeply confused Winford started questioning the entire Child of Prophecy deal. As the carriage rattled on, Kyle was still buzzing from his kill streak, and Dan was already daydreaming about their future rankings. Dan explained to a clueless Gary that they were aiming for the prestigious white belt, the same rank once held by the elite white tassel protectors. He described the hierarchy of green and black belts for the skilled, and finally, the dreaded red belt, the participation trophy of the night world. Dan described the red belt like a social plague, explaining that the academy basically ghosts those kids, giving them zero attention and the bare minimum training because the school has officially given up on them. He noted that since nobody cares what they do, red belts can basically wander off anywhere they want. Hearing this, Ray's eyes snapped wide open. While the other kids viewed the red belt as a badge of shame, Ray saw a golden ticket. To him, the lack of supervision meant total freedom to ditch class and hunt high-ranked beasts in peace. High-spirited for the first time in years, Ray clenched his fist with newfound determination. He was going to do his absolute best to be the worst student in academy history. The scene shifts to the Avery Night Academy, where the students finally arrive after their grueling journey. The sight of the fortress-like school immediately hooks them, and as they climb out of the carriages, even Gary has to admit it's incredibly cool. Ray stands there stunned, taking in the vast, beautiful expanse of a castle protected by colossal gates. To the students, the academy feels less like a school and more like a self-contained city inhabited only by warriors. They marvel at the mono crystals pulsing with energy throughout the grounds, realizing the entire city is powered by magic rather than a single torch. Looking at the sheer luxury of it all, Gary mutters that this is a completely different world from the dusty village they grew up in. Lancey interrupts their gawking, ordering Gary and Kyle to stay close if they don't want to get lost in the labyrinthine halls. He leads them on a grand tour through the massive armory and into the silent library, where he warns them to shut their mouths or face the consequences, though some of the girls are too busy swooning over how handsome their guide is to listen. When Dan asks if the librarians are also knights, Lancey explains the code. Every graduate must volunteer in the city for 2 years before they are permitted to choose their own path. Finally, they reach the somber end of the tour, a place that looks like a cemetery. Lancey reveals that these grounds hold the remains of those who died fighting for the Allure Kingdom. He drops the heavy truth that war has never truly ended, reminding them that a knight's first duty is the protection of their home. As the students chant their loyalty, Ray's blood begins to boil. To his dragon eyes, the heroic gear surrounding him is an insult. He realizes with cold fury that these humans have used the bodies of dragons to forge their armor and weapons. Sylvia breaks the tension by asking about the towering sculptures overlooking the graves. Lancey identifies them as the founders of the academy, the legendary Dragon Knights. While the other students chatter excitedly about dragon lore and history, Ray's dragon eye pulses with power. He looks past the stone and the soil, witnessing a hidden tomb buried deep beneath the graveyard, and he senses something down there, breathing and very much alive. As the boys head toward the dorms, Gary is busy dreaming about roommates who won't make his life miserable, but Ray is completely zoned out, his mind stuck on that strange, pulsing energy beneath the graveyard. He's certain it wasn't a magic beast. It was something far weirder, far more ancient. His brooding is cut short by Gary barking in his ear. "Are you even listening to me?" Ray casually snaps back that he heard every word about the roommates, just as they reach their assigned door. The good news, Ray and Gary are together. The shocking news, Sylvia is standing right there holding her bags. It turns out the Academy's policy on gender equality is very literal, and she's been assigned to the same room. Gary is flummoxed, and Sylvia is vibrating with such nervous energy she looks like she might spontaneously combust. Trying to be the diplomat, Gary tells her to look on the bright side. At least they're nice boys. Sylvia responds to this peace offering by smacking Gary so hard he hits the floor, before storming off in a huff, declaring she absolutely will not live with boys. While Gary is questioning his life choices on the floor, two more roommates, Monk and Ian, walk in on the wreckage. Ray, unfazed as usual, just dismisses the scene as a young Missy throwing a fit. Introductions are made, and Ray notes that Ian has the same fiery red hair he does. Checking the official list, Gary realizes they're still waiting on two more, Dan and someone named Marcia Woodwork. Suddenly, a defeated Sylvia trudges back up the stairs. It turns out the academy doesn't care about her complaints. She gives the boys a terrifying, soul-piercing stare, warning them that if a single one of them enters the room while she's changing, there will be blood. Banished to the hallway, Gary admits he knew they wouldn't let her switch rooms. Just then, Dan arrives, looking confused as to why everyone is loitering in the hall. Gary, smelling an opportunity for chaos, puts on his best scared face. "We found a massive, terrifying cockroach in there," he lies. "We were just waiting for someone brave enough to handle it." Fired up by the challenge, Dan scoffs at these cowardly future knights and declares he'll show them how it's done. He bursts through the door to slay the beast, while the rest of the boys huddle outside, stifling their laughter at the legendary disaster they've just unleashed on their new roommate. The scene shifts to the dining hall, where the new recruit energy has translated into a full-blown feeding frenzy. Dan is sitting there with a fresh, stinging handprint on his face courtesy of the cockroach prank, and is currently questioning his roommate's sense of humor. He grumbles that they've essentially turned Sylvia into a walking bucket of gunpowder who might just end him in his sleep. Gary, ever the optimist, just shrugs and tells him to be grateful. Most guys would kill for the chance to even get a slap from a girl that pretty. The conversation is cut short when Sylvia herself appears, looking absolutely miffed after overhearing them. Dan and Gary immediately scramble into panic mode, stuttering out pathetic justifications that they definitely weren't talking about her. Meanwhile, Ray is existing in a different dimension, specifically the dimension of free food. He is stuffing his face with every dish in sight, completely unbothered by the social drama. Sylvia watches the boys with pure disbelief. "How can you two even think about eating right now?" she mutters, her anxiety about the upcoming night belt tests clearly ruining her appetite. Gary, his mouth full of pork, just looks confused. "What does the test have to do with lunch?" Ray, momentarily pausing his feast, simply adds that the food is free, so it would be a crime not to eat it. Sylvia lets out a long, weary sigh, concluding that there is absolutely no saving these two. However, the peaceful gluttony is interrupted by a group of senior students who are watching the table with sneers. They start loudly mocking the country bumpkins, laughing about how the poor peasants must have never seen a decent meal in their lives. Ray and Gary both turn around, faces puffed out with food like a pair of squirrels, and give the seniors a blank, unimpressed stare. Undeterred by the lack of a reaction, the annoying seniors move on to Ian. They start poking fun at the muscular red-haired guy, making loud comments about his size, and joking that the poor chair is going to buckle under his weight. They continue to laugh, calling him country boy, and waiting for a reaction, oblivious to the fact that they're currently poking a very large, very strong bear. The atmosphere in the dining hall turns toxic as poor Ian sits there, head bowed, practically swallowing his tears while the seniors continue their verbal assault. The upperclassmen escalate, sneering that they want to puke just looking at the red-haired freaks from Rennie. Kyle freezes mid-bite, and over at the other end of the table, the twin sloth has to physically pin Badger's hand to the table to stop him from pulling a knife and redecorating the senior's mouth. The bastards keep pushing, laughing about how their red hair curse is probably contagious, and telling the country bumpkins to steer clear so they don't catch the disgusting look. Monk finally snaps, slamming his hands down and telling them to shut up. But Ian, bless his heart, actually tries to hold Monk back, not wanting to cause trouble. The seniors just laugh in Monk's face. "Stay out of this, loser. You're probably a red belt in the making anyway. Mind your business or we'll beat you into the floor." Turning back to Ian, the lead senior calls him a red-haired monster, and condescendingly tells him he better take the long way around whenever he sees them in the halls. He doesn't even finish the sentence before a glob of food hits him square in the face. The senior erupts screaming for the cowardly "moo" to show himself. That's when Ray enters the chat. With zero warning and the speed of a strike, Ray doesn't just show himself. He slams the senior's face into the table with a sickening thud and twists his arm behind his back, pinning him against the wood. Ray's voice is ice cold as he asks exactly who was supposed to be taking the long walk. Even with his face mashed into the gravy, the bastard keeps barking, calling Ray a disgusting monster. The dining hall turns into a riot. Other students start shouting that a freshman has gone insane, and the noise finally draws the attention of the knights. Ian, panicking, tries to pull Ray off, begging him to stop and insisting he's fine. Gary jumps in to help restrain him, while Sylvia warns him that the night belt tests are starting soon. If he catches a disciplinary charge now, his first impression will be completely ruined. But Ray's currently a very angry dragon in a human suit, and he looks like he couldn't care less about a first impression when there's a mouth that needs shutting. Ray isn't just holding on, he's sending a message. As he twists the senior's arm further back, the dining hall erupts into a chorus of snitching, with students frantically waving down the authorities to report the violent redhead. Sir Lancey finally storms into the center of the chaos, his voice booming with a command for Ray to release the boy immediately. The senior, now reduced to a blubbering mess, screams for Lancey to save him, but Ray only tightens his grip, his expression like cold stone. Lancey barks again, using Ray's full name, Ray Talon. Stop. Ray doesn't flinch. Instead, he looks Ian dead in the eye and delivers a piece of dragon logic he's carried since childhood. He tells him that when people try to take advantage of you or treat you like trash, you don't just take it, you show them the consequences. With a sickening crack that echoes through the silent hall, Ray finally lets go. The senior collapses, cradling what is clearly a broken arm, leaving the surrounding students paralyzed in shock at the sheer brutality of the newcomer. Ray points a dismissive finger at the sobbing senior and tells Ian, "People only learn when you actually teach them a lesson." Lancey, now standing inches from Ray, is vibrating with fury. "Why didn't you listen to my orders?" he demands. Ray just gives him a sneaky, borderline disrespectful smirk. He apologizes, but adds a stinging jab, telling Lancey he figured his own teacher would understand what it's like to only hear what he wants to hear, just like Lancey does. Without waiting for a response or a punishment, Ray casually grabs Gary's hand and heads back to the table. "Let's finish eating," he says, his voice flat. "We shouldn't let these pieces of trash ruin a perfectly good meal." Lancey is left standing there, absolutely livid at Ray's bold defiance. But the tide in the dining hall starts to turn. The whispers change from "look at that crazy kid" to "do you hear the senior started it?" Students start muttering that those upperclassmen have been bullies for years. And it was about time someone finally humbled them and handed them their butts on a silver platter. Ray might have a target on his back now, but among the freshmen, the red-haired monsters just became legends. The atmosphere in the hall shifts from rowdy dining hall drama to stifling tension as the three commanders arrive, signaling that the games are officially over. Winford steps forward, his voice cutting through the murmurs, commanding absolute silence as he welcomes the true power behind the institution, the six elders. A heavy, rhythmic thrumming fills the air, the sound of footsteps that seem to vibrate in the very marrow of the students' bones. Six figures draped in heavy cloaks, their faces obscured by haunting masks, file into the hall. The students' nerves skyrocket. It's one thing to hear rumors of the elders, but it's another to have the legendary heads of the academy personally overseeing your exam. As they pass, Ray's dragon instincts flare. He watches them with a narrowed gaze, sensing a crushing weight of power radiating from them. These humans, he muses, they feel dangerously similar to the ones who brought down my kind in the old world. Winford breaks the silence, explaining the high stakes. He reiterates that the elders aren't just here for show, they are the final witnesses to the tests that will determine each student's belt color. He doesn't sugarcoat it. A red belt is, for all intents and purposes, a badge of failure. However, Winford, ever the charismatic leader, flashes a warm smile to soften the blow. He tells them that even if they stumble and end up with a red belt, it isn't the end of the road. He reminds them that they were all handpicked at the age of 5 because they showed a spark of greatness, and that the coming years of training are meant to hone that raw talent into something legendary. Ray looks at Winford, feeling a rare twinge of guilt. He appreciates the man's endless positivity and genuine encouragement, which makes him a little anxious. He's so invested in us, Ray thinks. I wonder how he's going to take it when I intentionally tank this test to get that failure belt. With the motivational speech concluded, Winford turns the floor over to Lancey, who stands at attention. Lancey promises to carry out his duties with precision, his eyes scanning the crowd and lingering just a second longer on the red-haired troublemaker who just broke a senior's arm. The belt test is officially on. Lancey looks over at Ray and delivers a glare so lethal it could curdle milk, clearly not over the dining hall incident. Stepping up to the podium, he announces that the trials will consist of 5 grueling stages designed to test every fiber of a knight's potential: the Stone of Power, Blazing Inferno, Undetected Passage, Eye of Precision, and the Will of Truth. Explaining the first stage, the Stone of Power, Lancey points to a massive boulder. The goal is simple: push the rock to the finish line. Everyone gets 2 shots. If you fail the first time, you can wear a pair of magic gloves that boost your strength for the second attempt though. Using them is basically admitting you're a weakling, which will tank your final score. Gary leans over and whispers that this looks like a walk in the park. Ray agrees it's a piece of cake, but mutters that someone is definitely trying to sabotage his grade. Before Gary can ask what he means, Lancey's voice booms across the field. In a blatant display of petty authority, he announces that as the proctor, he is officially rejecting Ray Talon's participation in this stage. Ray doesn't even flinch. He just crosses his arms with a look of supreme confidence. Gary and Sylvia, however, lose their minds, protesting that the move is completely unfair. Lancey just shrugs, telling the crowd that this is a lesson in following superior orders. He smugly adds that if they have a problem with it, they can go cry to the elders, and if they tell him to change his mind, he'll listen. Gary whispers that Ray is firmly on Lancey's naughty list, while Sylvia begs Ray to go report the injustice immediately. But Ray just gives a careless wave. "Don't worry about it," he says. "This just made my life easier. You guys go ahead, I'll catch up in the next stage." Internally, Ray is doing a victory lap. Skipping a strength test is the fastest way to secure that beautiful, low-ranking red belt. The test begins, and both Gary and Sylvia pass with flying colors. Then it's Ian's turn. While the instructions were very clearly to push the rock, the red-hair tank decides logic is for other people. He reaches down, grabs the massive boulder, and simply lifts the entire thing off the ground, leaving the entire Academy elders included in a state of absolute shock. As Gary stumbles back, drenched in sweat but wearing a triumphant grin, Ray offers a quick congrats before dropping a truth bomb. "The second stage is going to be a lot harder for you. Get ready." Gary is still trying to catch his breath when Ray points toward the new Proctor mage wearing the distinct robes of the Roland Academy. Gary nearly has a heart attack. "How are we supposed to pass a magic test when we've never even learned magic?" He freaks out. Ray, ever the pragmatist, just shrugs. "The battlefield doesn't care what you haven't learned. My guess? We just have to resist it. Actually, guys who are physically built like tanks usually have the worst magic resistance, so they're probably trying to pinpoint our weaknesses." Gary stares at him, baffled by the logic. "Are you secretly some kind of all-rounded genius?" Ray just gives him a blank look, definitely not agreeing. The second stage, Blazing Inferno, begins. The Roland mage places a hand on Gary's forehead, plunging him into a mental hellscape. Gary manages to hold out for 57 seconds before the illusion breaks. Ray gives him a rare compliment, but Gary is dejected until Dan chimes in with the facts. "Are you kidding? 1 minute out here is like an entire hour inside the illusion." "You did amazing, man." Next up is Sylvia. She takes a deep breath and centers herself. "It's just an illusion," she repeats like a mantra. "Fire can't hurt a mind that stays cool." The mage unleashes a literal sea of flames in her mind, but Sylvia is a rock. 1 minute passes, then 3, then 5 minutes. The crowd goes wild, whispering that she's a goddess in human form. The proctor finally stops, genuinely impressed, and tells her she has more than proven herself. Finally, the mage calls out the name they've all been waiting for, Ray Talon. As Sylvia whispers a nervous "good luck," Ray walks up with his own tactical plan already mapped out. 5 minutes? Not a chance, he thinks. 20 seconds should be plenty of time to look like a failure. Or maybe I should just trip and give up immediately. Yeah, that sounds like a red belt move. Ray steps up to the mark, ready to deliver a world-class performance of The Boy Who Failed Instantly. The proctor places a hand on his forehead and initiates the illusion. But something goes catastrophically wrong. Instead of a standard field of fire, a towering red dragon erupts from the void of Ray's mind, roaring with the fury that belongs to his past life. The feedback is instantaneous and violent. The mage is physically blasted backward, hovering in the air for a terrifying second before collapsing as if his soul had been yanked out. Everyone watches in dead silence, eyes wide with horror, as the mage gasps out a final frantic warning. The boy, he is cursed by the red dragon. The dining hall whispers return with a vengeance, but this time they are laced with genuine fear. "Cursed," they mutter, backing away from the monster from Rennie. Winfred rushes to the unconscious mage, checking his vitals. Ray, actually concerned, asks if the old man is okay, but Winfred just tells him to go rest, though his mind is racing. He realizes the old man's mana has been completely vacuumed out, an impossibility for a simple entrance exam. In a secure chamber later that day, the 6 elders are out for blood. They demand to know how a veteran from the prestigious Roland Academy could be drained of his life force by a mere student. Winfred plays it cool, claiming it was just a mana disorder caused by the mage overexerting himself on previous students. The elders aren't buying now. Does a master mage mess up the basics? But they agree to let Winfred investigate and bring in a replacement proctor. As Winfred leaves, one of the masked elders leans over to an armored guard and whispers a dark command. The guard nods, promising to have it done immediately. while the elder's gaze lingers on Ray Talon in the distance. Back with the group, Ray asks for a definition of mana disorder. Sylvia explains it's like a magical backfire, what happens when a mage tries to squeeze water from a dry sponge. Gary just sighs and pats Ray's shoulder. Being a genius is hard, man. You just unlucky. While they joke around, Sylvia remains silent. She isn't an idiot. She knows a mage from Roland doesn't make basic mistakes. Her eyes keep drifting back to Ray, the word curse echoing in her mind like a bell she can't unring. The air is suddenly filled with a low, rhythmic thrumming as the ground begins to vibrate. Before anyone can scream earthquake, the landscape literally rewrites itself. Massive trees erupt from the soil in a blurred explosion of bark and leaves, transforming the open testing field into a dense, magical forest. Gary is standing there, jaw dropped, wondering if he's having a stroke, but Sylvia calmly clarifies. Someone is casting a high-level spell. Right on cue, a new proctor emerges from the foliage, announcing that the third stage undetected passage starts now. He doesn't give them a moment to breathe. Follow me, he commands, and try to match my movements if you don't want to be left behind. With that, he vanishes into the trees with blinding speed. The students scramble to keep up, their boots thumping against the mossy floor. Poor Dan is having a midlife crisis, wailing about how his classmates are suddenly Olympic sprinters, but Gary is locked in. Not today, Dan, he shouts, pushing his pace, only for Sylvia to effortlessly glide past him without a second glance. The proctor, weaving through the branches, thinks to himself, maybe I'm being too hard on these rookies. I should probably slow down before he glances over his shoulder and nearly trips. The kids are just following, they're gaining on him. Gary is even heckling Monk, telling him they're about to overtake him. Realizing he's vastly underestimated this batch of students, the proctor smirks. Alright then, no more taking it easy. Catch me if you can. In the back of the pack, Ray is struggling with a very specific problem. Moving on 2 legs still feels like a design flaw to him. I'm really not built for this, he grumbles to himself. I used to have 4 limbs and a tail for balance. This upright thing is exhausting. His internal complaining is cut short when his dragon-enhanced senses pick up a high-pitched whistle in the air. Heads up, he roars to the group. Suddenly, the forest isn't just a racetrack, it's a shooting range. Another proctor has appeared in the shadows, raining down a barrage of arrows to see which of these future knights can actually dodge while they run. The female proctor watches the chaos from the shadows, scoffing that her partner didn't need to hold back since there are too many kids clogging up the forest. He just chuckles, telling her she's in for a surprise because this group is actually competent. She doesn't miss a beat, barking at the students to keep their pace or get lost, while dropping a final instruction, grab a bow. As the students snatch up the weapons, the realization hits them the academy isn't doing these stages one by one anymore. They've officially merged the third stage with the fourth, Eyes of Precision. The goal is simple but brutal: hit 3 targets while sprinting through the forest under the proctor's constant interference. Ray, trailing slightly behind, is still committed to his Operation Red Belt plan. I'm fine with being the worst student, he muses, but I'm not coming in dead last. That's just embarrassing. He decides to show off just a tiny bit of his true power and activates his dragon eye. The world slows down. The colors shift, and the hidden threads of mana become visible. Suddenly, Ray's pupils slit. He senses a surge of magical energy. An arrow, infused with a dangerous amount of force, is whistling through the leaves directly toward Gary's back. Without thinking, Ray lunges forward and shoves Gary out of the way. The magical arrow is moving too fast for Ray to recover his stance, and for a split second, it looks like he's about to take the hit. But out of nowhere, another arrow streaks through the air, colliding with the magical projectile and knocking it off course. Ray's internal alarms are screaming. That shot? That wasn't a test, he thinks, narrowing his eyes at the tree line. That was a kill shot. Their classmate Marcia steps out from the brush, lowering her bow. She asks if they're okay, and Gary, ever the fan of talented people, shouts his thanks. Marcia just mumbles that she's lucky she was nearby, though she looks just as shaken by the power of that arrow. Ray doesn't have time to thank her. His dragon eye picks up a dozen more vibrations in the air. More coming, he bellows. Move! On his signal, the group dies and rolls through the dirt as a fresh volley of arrows shreds the leaves where they stood a second ago. Ray isn't just watching the arrows anymore, he's analyzing the scent of the attacks. His dragon instincts scream that something is fundamentally wrong. The projectiles flying at them aren't just wood and feathers. They are enveloped in chi, a lethal energy far beyond the standard arrows the proctor is using. He realizes this isn't a test gone wrong, it's an assassination attempt. And given his cursed reputation, He's fairly certain the bullseye is painted on his own forehead. Another chi-infused arrow whistles through the leaves, dead set on the group. Ray snatches a bow, notches an arrow, and prepares to intercept it midair with a counter shot that would defy human physics. But his raw draconic power is too much for the Academy's standard issue equipment. Just as he's about to release, the bow shatters into splinters in his hands, leaving Gary and the others staring at him in shock. The fourth stage proctor isn't oblivious either. She senses the murderous intent in the woods and immediately retaliates, launching an all-out magical attack toward the source of the chi. To her horror, the intruder dodges her strike with impossible speed, vanishing into the foliage without leaving so much as a footprint. Realizing she can't catch the culprit and that a panic would ruin the entire ceremony, she clears her throat and shouts to the trembling students, "My apologies, my arrow accidentally went astray. Continue the test." Ray narrows his eyes. Liar, he thinks. He knows she's just trying to keep the peace, but the fact that an elite proctor couldn't even graze the intruder is terrifying. Once the dust settles and they finish the course, they regroup with Monk and the third stage proctor. Gary and Ray pull Sylvia aside to whisper about the accident. Sylvia's face goes pale. "We have to report this to the knights," she insists. Ray shakes his head. "The proctor just lied to our faces. Either she's covering up a massive security breach, or the attacker is a knight." Gary nods solemnly. If someone could sneak into a venue guarded by the 6 elders, they've got to be an insider. Telling the wrong person might just hand us over to the killer. Sylvia looks around the forest, every shadow now feeling like a threat. "What are we going to do?" she asks, her voice trembling. Ray looks back at the dark tree line, a dangerous spark flickering in his slit pupil eyes. "We wait," he says calmly. But internally, his dragon soul is baring its teeth. He doesn't know who that bastard was, but if they come back for a second round, he isn't going to let a broken bow stop him from ripping them apart. The intruder doesn't get very far. After ditching his bow and attempting to vanish into the underbrush, he finds himself staring down the business end of the female proctor's arrow. She's tracked him down, and she isn't in a talking mood. "Stop right there," she commands, her voice like steel. She demands to know why he's targeting the new recruits, her aim never wavering, as she threatens to end him on the spot if he so much as twitches. The intruder doesn't surrender. His hand creeps toward the hilt of his sword, a calculated, defiant move. The proctor's eyes narrow, and she warns him one last time that she can shoot him down before he even clears his scabbard. For a tense second, the forest goes silent, the only sound is the rustle of leaves between 2 predators. The guy gives her a sharp, lethal glare, and the standoff snaps. In a blur of motion, they lunge at each other. The quiet of the woods replaced by the clash of steel and the whistle of arrows as the proctor and the assassin begin a high-stakes duel to the death. The scene shifts to the 5th and final stage, the Will of Truth. This trial is designed to push the students to their absolute limits by testing their raw willpower and latent chi manipulation. Delbert stands center stage, wielding a weapon that looks more like a relic than a training tool. He informs the wide-eyed crowd that the sword is forged from an ultra beast crystal harvested from a legendary firebird. The blade is alive with volatile energy. The moment a hand touches the hilt, it releases a torrent of flames. Dilbert admits that while these kids haven't been taught formal chi techniques yet, they are expected to suppress the fire using nothing but the sheer force of their spirit and concentration. The first victim called to the stage is Ian. The red-haired powerhouse looks uncharacteristically anxious as he steps up, his massive frame towering over the weapon. The second his fingers wrap around the hilt, the firebird soul inside the blade reacts violently. A massive, roaring plume of fire erupts from the sword, engulfing Ian in a literal fireball. When the smoke clears, the flames die down to reveal Ian standing there with a face scorched completely black, looking like he just walked out of a chimney. Even Lancey is startled by the sheer intensity of the outburst. Realizing Ian's brute force approach didn't exactly tame the spirit, Lancey quickly clears his throat and calls for the next student to try their luck with the bird of prey. The scene shifts away from the trials to a secluded area where Elder Gibby is having a tense, secret meeting with the failed assassin. Gibby doesn't hide his disappointment. The intruder not only missed his target, but was sloppy enough to get caught by a proctor. As the guy stutters out an apology for his failure, Gibby sighs, confessing that he never actually expected to solve the problem this quickly. Then, the Elder pulls out a specialized mask of magical artifact that allows the wearer to completely change their appearance. As he slides the mask over his face, Gibby mutters to himself with a dark, satisfied chill. He realizes that even though the assassination was a bust, the attempt itself served a greater purpose. It sent a clear, terrifying signal to their hidden followers. The message is simple. The Pureblood Guild hasn't gone anywhere, and they are officially back in the shadows of the Academy. While Ian is still wiping the soot off his face, Gary steps onto the stage and shows everyone how it's done. He grips the hilt, and the flames don't just settle, they practically purr. He controls the fire flawlessly, looking every bit the prodigy the Academy wants. As Ray steps up for his turn, Sylvia leans over to Gary. Is he actually strong? She asks, her curiosity piqued by Ray's weird behavior. Gary pauses, thinking back. He's incredibly strong, Gary admits. 10 years ago, an intermediate rank demonic wolf attacked me. Ray saved my life and took it down. The other classmates overhear and laugh it off as a childhood exaggeration. You guys were 5, they scoff. It was probably just a big dog, not an intermediate beast. But Sylvia isn't laughing. She's watching Ray, wondering why a kid with that much potential is working so hard to hide it. Ray reaches for the sword, but the moment his fingers touch the hilt, his dragon system pings with a notification. Do you want to absorb the ultra-grade beast crystal? Suddenly, the legendary sword goes dark. No flames, no glow, nothing. The students start whispering immediately, joking that accidents follow this guy like a lost puppy. Ray casually swings the dead sword left and right, looking genuinely confused. Is this thing broken? He asks. Delbert nearly has a stroke. He snatches the weapon back, his hands shaking. This isn't just a sword, it's a national treasure of the Allure Kingdom forged from a firebird crystal, and Ray just turned it into a fancy paperweight. Delbert grabs Ray by the collar, screaming that he must have done something to sabotage it. Ray plays it cool, pointing out the obvious. It's an ultra-grade crystal, sir. What could a student like me possibly do to it? Besides, you were staring at me the whole time. Before Delbert can explode with rage, an armored knight rushes onto the stage and whispers an urgent report into his ear. Delbert's face goes pale, and his anger vanishes, replaced by pure shock. Without a word of explanation about the broken treasure or Ray's status, he abruptly announces that all tests are over and orders everyone back to their dorms immediately. The tension of the trials breaks into a collective sigh of relief as the students are dismissed with instructions to gather for dinner, where their official belts will finally be distributed. While his classmates are busy buzzing with excitement and debating their potential ranks, Ray is laser-focused on one goal, that sweet, sweet red belt of freedom. However, his sharp dragon-enhanced hearing picks up a chilling conversation between the passing knights that sours his mood. Deep in the shadows of the forest, the 4th stage Proctor, the one who had tried to cover up the accidental arrow, has been found dead. Winford arrives at the grisly scene, his face hardening as the armored guards deliver the report. The most terrifying detail? Her body is still warm. She was silenced only moments ago, right under their noses. The news travels fast to the Elder's inner sanctum. In a room thick with secrets, the armored knights lay out the grim reality. The Proctor, a captain-level knight of the Green Belt rank, was taken out with a single clinical strike. The security was perfect. Not a single intruder alarm was triggered, which leads to only one conclusion. This was an inside job. The Elders trade suspicious glances behind their masks. The rumors they've ignored for years are suddenly very real. Is it the Pureblood Guild? One asks, while another whispers of the Dark Guild. The fact that a captain was murdered during a controlled exam is an outrageous slap in the face to the Academy's authority. All eyes turn to the head elder, waiting for a decree of war. Instead, the head elder's voice drops to a cold, commanding whisper. He orders absolute silence. Not a single word of this assassination is to leak outside the room. The reputation of the Academy depends on the facade of safety. As the knight captains are dispatched to hunt for the traitor in their midst, the students sit down for their celebratory dinner, completely unaware that a killer is likely sitting right there among them, wearing a knight's uniform. The dining hall is buzzing with a mix of stomach-churning nerves and high-stakes excitement as the belt ceremony looms. While the crowd waits, Gary and Sylvia are busy getting to know their final roommate, Marcia Woodwork. Gary's ears perk up at her last name. He asks if she has any relation to an adventurer named Anne Woodwork. Marcia beams, confirming that she's her daughter. Ray, however, isn't interested in a trip down memory lane. He is deep in a mental rabbit hole, analyzing the murder of the Proctor. To kill a Greenbelt captain with one strike while bypassing all the alarms isn't just a skilled move, it's the work of a monster. He's already narrowed the suspect list down to the only people powerful enough to pull it off, the commanders or the elders themselves. His grim contemplation is shattered when Gary starts barking at him. Ray, are you even listening? This is Marcia. Remember that adventurer we met on the way to Rennie 10 years ago? This is her daughter. What are the odds? Ray gives him a blank stare, clearly having heard absolutely 0% of that conversation. Gary explodes in frustration, pinching Ray's cheeks as hard as he can. You've been zoning out all day. Get with the program. Sylvia watches them, her expression soft with concern. She wonders if Ray is still rattled by the stray arrow from earlier. But Ray quickly pivots. He isn't about to tell them that there's a dead body cooling in the forest that's a one-way ticket to putting a target on their backs. Instead, he rubs his sore cheeks and mutters a half-truth. I was just wondering why that sword in the 5th test didn't work for me. Sylvia sighs, genuinely feeling bad for him. To her, it just looks like Ray has the worst luck in the history of the academy. She starts to say something comforting about his disastrous performance, but the air in the room suddenly shifts as the high-ranking officials prepare to announce the results. The moment of truth arrives as the 3 knight commanders take their places at the head of the hall. Winford calls for order, announcing that the belts will finally be distributed. The atmosphere is electric as Gary Blueblood is the first name called. He walks up with the confidence of a king, while the crowd whispers that he's a shoo-in for the prestigious white belt. Others are placing bets on their goddess Sylvia, assuming both of them will take the top honors. The hall goes silent as Winford reveals the result. Gary is awarded a black belt. Gary's confident stride falters, his face falling in visible disappointment. The crowd starts buzzing if the star pupil didn't get a white belt. What does that mean for everyone else? The surprises keep coming. Ian and Sylvia are both awarded white belts. The students nearly riot in shock, especially seeing the red-haired monster Ian reach the highest rank. Then it's Ray Talon's turn. The entire room holds its breath, fully expecting him to be handed a red belt after his disastrous, glitchy performance. Ray is practically salivating at the thought of his upcoming freedom. But when Winfred speaks, the world turns upside down. Ray is given a black belt. Ray stands there, paralyzed with shock. A black belt? After I intentionally failed? He looks over at Dan, who is currently having a breakdown because he is the only one in the group who actually got a red belt. Even Monk scored a black belt. A nearby student coldly reminds Dan that he can't argue with the results, but Ray isn't listening. He's staring at his new belt, convinced that there is a massive conspiracy at play. There is no logical way his scores earned this someone in the high command wants him kept in the middle ranks. Finally, the Knight Commander announces the next phase. The students will now be split into training groups led by different instructors based on their belt colors. As Gary stands there brooding over what a black belt even entails, their new instructor steps into the light. Leaning against a pillar and casually smoking a cigarette, the man scans the list of names for his new black belt squad. His eyes linger on the 2 redheads, Ray and Monk, and he lets out a weary cloud of smoke. You kids better not get me in trouble, he mutters under his breath. He then looks the group up and down, a sharp glint in his eyes as he addresses them by a title that sends a shiver through Ray's soul, Future Dragon Knights.